L'chaim und Brach, everyone. A guten Chodesh, a gebenchte Chodesh. Geula de Chodesh. As we stand actually right now in the moments in Chodesh, the moments that Chodesh, we're transitioning into Chodesh Tammuz. Around the time of the Moiled, I don't remember, I wasn't paying that much attention when it says Tzarech Ladas as HaMoiled, to listen to the Moiled exactly when the moment of the Moiled is, but definitely, it's Nochen Ladas, okay. In any case, so when was the Moiled, today or tomorrow? Wednesday, Tuesday? I think it was Tuesday. So we know that the Moiled of the moon is deeply connected to the rebirth of the Jewish people, rebirth of the Geula, the birthing of Mashiach Tzidkenu. It's all deeply connected to the moon, which the moon we know is representing Malchus Beis David, the kingdom of David HaMelech. So, and that is true in every Rosh Chodesh. Every Rosh Chodesh is deeply connected to the Geula. Chodesh Tammuz is much deeper connected to the Geula because Chodesh Tammuz is the fourth month. And we know that David HaMelech is related to number 4, Malchus Beis David, because he's the Regel Haravi. He's the fourth leg in the chariot. Three Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and David HaMelech. His name, David, starts with a Dalid and ends with a Dalid. What more? It's a Rosh Tevis. It's a Rosh Tevis with Dalid, and it ends with a Dalid. Seifed Tevis Dalid. So Dalid is deeply, deeply, deeply connected and attached to the Inyan, the Geula, Mashiach Tzidkenu, and so forth. This particular month, Tammuz, is also the idea that it is a very dark month. Has been historically. It's the month that initiates the Golus. The fast day, Shavasa B'Tammuz, and so on and so forth. It brings in the 3 weeks. Dark time of the year. We know, however, the secret that was taught to us, and the Rebbe particularly emphasized this non-stop, that the secret of the Geula is that it comes dafka from the tachton, from the low, from the Golus itself. Geula is not some kind of a force outside of the exile. It's when we tinker into the pnimius of the exile itself, when we break the outer surface and we go deeper and deeper until we hit the nekuda hapnimius achi pnimi. We reach the very, very inner core, the divine energy that is buried in Golus. From there we activate the Geula. And that's the idea of discovering the Aleph in Geula brings us Geula. And for that reason, Chodesh Tammuz, and particularly, is Chodesh HaGeula, because this is the kind of the low side of the year, the low point of the year, Tammuz and Av. But we know that sometimes the beginning of something is even stronger. So Tammuz is the beginning of the Yerida. So Dafke in Rosh Chodesh Tammuz is the koyach and a real power of Geula, of transformation. And that's why we find that in the latter years, the Rebbe points this out many times, we already begin experiencing the Geula in Chodesh Tammuz with the Yom Tov of Yud Beis Tammuz. Because as we're getting, since the whole Geula is mitoich HaChoshech, Geula is not some light coming from above, but it's coming from within the Choshech itself. That's why the Oyer HaGeula comes dafke in Tammuz, Chag HaGeula. And the Rebbe says an interesting thing, that the Yom Tov, the Friediger Rebbe's Chag HaGeula, is the last hachana that's needed, that there should be a geula as a hachana to the geula amitis v'ashleimas. Such a lashon I saw just recently, and I think in Tavshin Mem Tes, in Parshas Kairach, that Rebbe uses such a lashon, that the last geula that's necessary as a hachana for the ultimate geula is the geula of the Friediger Rebbe in Chodesh Tammuz, because this here lies the power of the geula in Chodesh Hadalid. David Malka Mashiach. Therefore, it's the ultimate time to really, as we tune in Chassidus Farbrengen, locally over here, those that are listening far, wherever you are, as we tune in a deep way together, all of us together, we have the power to finally achieve the ultimate flip, to flip the darkness of Tammuz this week. This year we shouldn't have 3 weeks of Bein HaMtzarim, but we should have the ultimate merchav. That Mamish Rish Chodesh Tammuz should be already the full Hisgalos of Moshiach Tzidkenu. As we're sitting at the Farbrengen, at a certain point we don't even know what happens as it transitions from Golus to Geula. This is our blessing at the beginning of the Farbrengen. Mamish, it should literally happen, take it from a Yad Mamish, during the time of our Farbrengen tonight, which is an auspicious time of flipping over Tammuz, bringing out the Pnimius of the Golus, to reveal the Geula. Let it be the revelation of Mashiach Tzidkenu L'chaim. But Soif Kol Soif, there has been, till now, a darkness. And as we're approaching the day of Gimmel Tammuz, it particularly is difficult. It's difficult. I made this Farbrengen as a hachana to Gimmel Tammuz because it's hard. Gimmel Tammuz always is an uncomfortable time, a hard time, a difficult time. It causes a lot of pain. The Golus is already 2,000 years old, but as it pertains particularly to us Chassidim, there is a certain extra darkness and a real painful darkness associated with Gimmel Tammuz, in that we're in the dark. We're in the dark. We have a Helim, the Hester, on our leader, on our Rebbe, and we don't see him, and it's very painful. Especially after we were given a promise. In the years leading up to Gimmel Tammuz, the Rebbe spoke very clearly and gave us a haftacha, and he gave us a nevuah, a promise, and he gave us a nevuah that Mashiach is about to come. And then abruptly, we had this concealment and this darkness hit us. And as years goes by, and another year goes by, it becomes more excruciatingly difficult. It's difficult to be happy. It's difficult to retain the emunah, and not retain the emunah, but actually increase the emunah, which is supposed to get stronger and stronger every moment. And yet we see this year that there's been tremendous influx, a tremendous growth in emunah of the Jewish people in the Geula. Across the world, not just amongst Chabad Chassidim. In a sense, maybe amongst the Chabad community we were a little bit verschlufen. Maybe the beauty over here is that it actually was and inspired a little bit from outside of Chabad, which created this extra inspiration. The women across the world, 22,000 women gathered in Chodesh Shvat for a Geula gathering. This is unheard of. And they did it in a way that the Rebbe spoke about, that women will get together. Not stam, it was common to have gatherings for, Soididus, Musar, kind of a thing. And also, Yidden, Kinusei Tefillah. Women have always been making these gatherings of saying Tehillim. What was unique this time wasn't only a kinus tefillah, it was a kinus of haftacha. And now there was a strong certainty by Neshei Yisroel, by women across the board, from what we say in Allah Kreisen, from all the various different groups of Jews, more religious, less religious, more different, Chabad women, non-Chabad, Sfardim, all types. It was just a beautiful moment of unity and achdus. Think about the number, thousands, not the one we're saying 22,000, around 20,000, maybe 20 or 30,000 women across the world, across continents, dancing for the Geula. That's because Nishmas Yisroel, Yidden sense the Geula, and particularly women, because women are more connected to Malchus Beis David. So they sense it before the men sense it. So the vibrations of Geula are definitely kicking in. And we're sensing the redemption now more than ever. What I want to say is something interesting that hit me 2 days ago. Mamash, as I came out of the mikveh, just yesterday, I think it was yesterday, a thought occurred to me, and I think it's very comforting and exciting. Even though I know when we go to Chassidim and we give another remez and another clue and another inyan, sometimes it's difficult because we say, we heard that already. We've gotten so used to having ups with different remazim, and then when they didn't come to fruition, it's good. It's nice to have a high for a couple of moments. But that doesn't mean that we don't take the opportunity to look in deeper and see taka the meaning, and who knows, we might hit the right one right now. So we, the Jewish people, are not strangers to have prolonged promises, meaning promises that do not immediately materialize. Promises that in the beginning, initially, we don't see them being fulfilled. And if you think about it, here's an amazing idea. Our people, our first story of our people at the very, very beginning of time, the story of the Jewish people at the very onset of time, the very first story the Torah tells us about the first Jew, is a story about a promise that did not materialize immediately. The Eibishter told Avram Avinu, Lech lecha me'aretzecha, go from your land, ve'escha l'goy gadol, I will make you into a great nation. Avram went immediately. He didn't wait, didn't tarry, he didn't schlep around here and there. Avram picked himself up immediately and left the land of wherever, the land of Haran where he was, and he went up to Eretz Yisroel. And the Eibishter's promise didn't come. And a month went by, and I'm sure they were waiting. They didn't know. They had no clue. They kept on wondering if Sarah's pregnant already. Taking pregnancy tests. They're sure the Eibishter said so. It's going to happen. And a month went by, and a year went by, and 2 years went by, and 3 years went by, and 4 years went by, and a decade went by, and a decade and a half went by, and 2 decades went by to the Eibishter. And it's not like by that time, now we can say, Hashem made so many promises. Okay, one of them he didn't keep yet. This was like the first promise he's making to the first Yid. And yet, this is the way the Eibishter works. The promise did not materialize right away. It requires an asaya and a test. And it was extremely difficult. Why was it extremely difficult? Because I don't think the promise was so private. Probably it was people knew. People knew that the Eibishter promised Avram. Obviously, especially if Avram Avinu was going and teaching, publicizing monotheism and starting a new movement, and he's an old man, what's the point of starting a movement that doesn't have a continuity? So whether it says anywhere, I haven't seen anywhere that Lech Lecha, that the Eibishter promises him was something publicized in the newspapers, but there's no reason to believe that it was a secret. Here there was a promise of God that he promised him. And what's Avram Avinu's shlichus? His shlichus is to be mefarsim the Eibishter, the truth of one God, and he himself is a contradiction to that emunah. What's happening in his life is a contradiction to that emunah. That made it excruciatingly difficult for Avram Avinu to continue doing his shlichus b'simcha, because it's not happening. And yet Avram didn't break, because that's what a Jew is made out of. A Jew is made out of steel emunah. And he had certain emunah that it was going to happen. And they're getting older and older. Think about it. The longer the time passes, the possibility of naturally having a child is slipping away more. Now, Sarah Bechlal was an akara. She couldn't have a child. Medically, she couldn't have a child. She didn't even have a womb. But still, the elder, you see, the Torah does speak about the age. They're becoming farther and farther and farther, becoming less likely and less likely. And what do you think are happening? The scoffers are getting stronger and stronger, and Avram is plowing his way through. And wie lang got gedoyert? How long did it take? So when Avram left the land of Canaan, he was ben shivim v'chamei shana. He was 75 years old. And when did Avram cuddle his baby that was born to him? Avram be ma'as shana. Avram was 100 years old. 25 years at gedoyert it took for the first promise that the Eibishter made to Avram Avinu that he would have a child. And that child that was born to him is really Mashiach. Because Yitzchak that's born, we know Yitzchak is the Geula. Az Yamale Schaik Pinu, the laughter. Tzchaik Asali Elokim, this is the laughter. And everybody laughed first. And then the question was, who had the last laugh? Who had the last laugh? And Avram had, it wasn't a matter of laughing in that way, but the last laugh was the tzchaik of Kedusha. All those who made fun, all those that said it's impossible, stuck their heads in shame. Because when the Eibishter said, the Eibishter is going to fulfill. And we, Slabodkea Chassidic, were given a mission 27 years ago. We were given a mission by our Rebbe to be mafarsim to the entire world that Egia Zman Gulaschem, the time of redemption has arrived, and Atot Kumt Mashiach. And that everything in the world is already now making its final preparations. And that we can see the Geula already. And all we need is open up our eyes. And suddenly, was macht der Eibishter? The exact same thing. Suddenly, trach, boom. The whole thing seems to collapse in our face. And we have to continue spreading this mission and this darkness. What's the mission? To spread that Mashiach is coming. and in the time when what we saw as the not just what we saw, what we were told as the Talich HaGeula, and through whom it's coming and what it's all about, seems to have fired right back in our face. And in the beginning it wasn't so hard because we said, everybody was comfortable with the idea that Mashiach reveals himself, conceals himself, comes back a couple of months, 3 months, 5 months. Everybody held out in accordance to their stubbornness. But after a while, who had koiches anymore? And yet, somehow, the Besudas HaGeula survived. It wasn't easy, and still not easy, but it survived. And we're holding right now 25 years. And I believe we can say, Notz Tchiloson B'Soifon. The first story of the Jewish people, the last story of the Jewish people are interwoven, they're connected. We had 25 years of having to show the Eibishter, Avram Avinu, our father, Reish L'Cholam Aminim, his stubborn emunah, and now we have 25 years. But just like in the end, the ultimate laughter came. The emes was revealed, so be it, lo yipul davar arza. It won't fall one word, chas v'shalom, one tiny little thing the Rebbe said regarding the Geula, including all the radical things that seem unbelievable, disbelief that the Rebbe said, things like that. Every single detail and detail sheba detail is going to be fulfilled to the T. Takes time? No. We have precedent already. That's the unit. Everything takes avodah. And the avodah that Rebbe taught us again and again comes dafke in the darkness. The chiddush that happens right now is as we're crossing Gimmel Tammuz, and hopefully we will not cross Gimmel Tammuz in Golus. As I mentioned earlier, hopefully tonight already we will see the full-fledged revelation of Mashiach Tzidkenu. But the inyan is that we're going into the year 26. And 26 is Shem Havaya. 26 is Yud Kei Vav Kei. And we know that Mashiach Tzidkenu comes to reveal the full revelation of the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Tetragrammaton. We know that all the revelations of Yud Kei Vav Kei that they were, including the Giluyim of Matan Torah and all the revelations, the Ani Hashem da Yetzias Mitzrayim, is to a certain degree considered Havaya Delatata. It's considered the lower Havaya. And the Gilui of Mashiach, in Chassidus it says, Havaya Deliela. Havaya Deliela is really the Gilui of Atzmus Mahus, the Eibush himself. But since there has to be Gilui, it has to come through the Oisiyos. It has to come through Yud Kei Vav Kei. So the fact that we're now, mamish, entering into the beginning of the Gilui in 26, the 26th year, there's all the reason to believe that it's happening, and it's going to happen. And it's going to happen really powerful and really strong. If we're sensitive and we're not silly, sorry to say it's popular, it's the more popular thing to be silly now. And to believe in nature more than to believe in our Rebbe. And to believe in the scoffers more than to believe in the word of the Eibishter that comes through the Navi Hador. But that, the silliness, is going to remain silly. It's an Arishkeit. The Geula is going to come. The revelation is going to happen. Mashiach is going to come. Mamish. And we will tanzen and lachen. Be'ezus Hashem. Because what I'm going to say is that we're seeing now that the inyanim of the Geula are exploding, and those that are sensitive, that's what I'm saying, those that are sensitive, or doing, not sensitive. We're not sensitive on our own. We're sensitive because the Rebbe said, learn the sichos and open your eyes. Then we can see Geula all around us. So Be'ezus Hashem, as the Farbrengen goes on, We'll talk about it. L'chaim u'lebracha, may we see Mashiach mamish, take it from Yad mamish. L'chaim. Hey, look at that. Ruth is here. We have the captain here. L'chaim. So much has been said about the Rebbe. So much has been written about the Rebbe. I don't know. Very few people had so much written about them like the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So much written, so much spoken about by all different types of lecturers, teachers, academics, Chassidim, non-Chassidim, observers from the side, religious, non-religious. The Rebbe is a very, 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 very powerful figure in the world that literally shooken up the world in many, many ways, and therefore has gotten attention and gotten noticed. Some of these descriptions and write-ups are phenomenal. They really, really bring out tremendous qualities and tremendous powers, righteousness, goodness, kindness, leadership, and so on and so forth in the Rebbe. But my question tonight, and this is what I want to direct tonight's Farbrengen, is what does the Rebbe say about the Rebbe? What does the Lubavitcher Rebbe say about the Lubavitcher Rebbe? Why is that an important question? Because as great as we can get to know someone, we can never know a person like the person knows himself. Chazal say it b'negea to an illness. Lev yodei amaras nafshay. A person knows his own bitterness when it comes to a medical situation. Even though you have the greatest medical expert, greatest doctor, when it comes to Yom Kippur, feeding the person, if the chola says he needs to eat, he knows himself better than anybody else. You can be the greatest expert. And therefore, a person speaking about himself can tell you so much more, because we're observing only from the chitzonius into the pnimius. And the question is how deep we can see. But to be able to know from the pnimius out, from the inner point outward, that's a whole new level. And that is true even when we will be talking about a regular person. That the person knows himself. Usually, sometimes a person is completely self-deceived. But a person knows himself better than someone else, even if the people are. If you're dealing with an elevated human being, when you're dealing with someone who is ginormous, he's just, and we say in the Chassidus, we say, beli gevul higher, infinitely higher, and a complete beyond, exponentially beyond. So we could also understand how limited our vision is, and how limited our perception is. And therefore, how much greater and deeper our understanding is if we can hear from him what he is all about. Because we have only a tiny, 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 little perception. Very minuscule perception. In the vastness of a Rebbe, of a tzaddik in general, of a Rebbe, and of the Rebbe. And in addition to that, the Rebbe Bechlal sees, whenever he looks at anybody and anything, he sees it so deeply and in such a unique way, more than anybody else anyways. So even when the Rebbe is looking at any phenomenon or any person that's not him, his description and his ability to penetrate into the soul of that individual, of that personality, is huge. So it would be good to get the Rebbe's view, and like when we learn the Parshias, we want to know what Korach is all about. How can you learn Korach without the Rebbe? How can you learn the Meraglim without the Rebbe? Every story and every person, when the Rebbe comes and speaks about that person, it sheds such incredible light. And everybody knows that the Rebbe's teachings are not just another Dvar Torah. The Rebbe opens up every subject from its inner core, from its pneumius, and exposes its essence. That's even when he's dealing with outside phenomena. So how much greater is it when we hear from the Rebbe about himself? But you might ask and say, it's a silly question. The Rebbe talking about himself? Why would he speak about himself? Did the Rebbe talk about himself? It's not, generally, we don't have high regard for someone that talks about himself. So did the Rebbe talk about himself? So the answer is yes. And it's on a few levels. Number one, the Rebbe describes in his thousands of hours of sichos, and memorim, of talking, and the Rebbe discusses various different Torah leaders of the Jewish people. And the Rebbe explains their leadership, explains what they're about. And we get insight into what a leader bechlal is. That we would never have appreciated such depth. We on our own would never have appreciated such depth in a leader like the Rebbe sees in leaders. Especially when it comes to certain people. Especially when it comes to certain individuals. L'chaim chavra. Let's stay here first. L'chaim. Especially when it comes to the greatest leaders of the Jewish people. For instance, the way the Rebbe speaks about Moshe Rabbeinu. The Rebbe gives us insight in Moshe Rabbeinu, that's Moshe Rabbeinu, David HaMelech. The Rebbe speaks about the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe. And in general, the Rebbe speaks about all the Nesiei Chabad, all the leaders of Lubavitch, all the Chabad Rabbeim. And the Rebbe gives incredible biurim, nifloim, wondrous explanations in the depth of leadership. And obviously it takes one to know one. So by seeing what the Rebbe writes about leaders, about how the Rebbe describes the Baal Shem Tov, how the Rebbe talks about David HaMelech, how the Rebbe talks about Moshe Rabbeinu, that gives us insight into what the idea of a leader is in the Rebbe's mind. That's number one. If we want to know what the Rebbe says about the Rebbe, in general, you can look through the sichos and you can see what the Rebbe speaks about, all these giants of leaders. Particularly in the Rebbe's talks, there is a special, unique excitement when the Rebbe talks about his personal Rebbe, the Friediger Rebbe. When the Rebbe talks about the Friediger Rebbe and describes who he is and what he is to the generation, that's like very unique and very special, very descriptive, very deep, eye-opening and soul-opening. Now, okay, so these are these leaders. What does it have with the Rebbe? Well, the Rebbe tells us an interesting thing. The Rebbe says that when one speaks about someone else and reveals certain things about him, the Rebbe uses a phrase, Hu pasak al atzmai. The Rebbe says it. He paskins on himself. An example for that is in the Maimer Ata Tetzaveh, famous Maimer, the Rebbe that we have. The Rebbe gave the last Maimer that the Rebbe gave us to learn, the last Maimer that we have so far, that the Rebbe gave us to learn. And Chassidim have the minhag, we learn it now primarily, and it's extra kashrus. So in this Maimer, the Rebbe is talking about a Maimer of the previous Rebbe, where the previous Rebbe is speaking about the idea, the concept of Reya Mehemna, the faithful shepherd, Moshe Rabbeinu, and the Friediger Rebbe talks about Mordechai HaTzadik. And the Friediger Rebbe says that Mordechai HaTzadik was the Reya Mehemna of his generation. He was the faithful shepherd. Meaning he was Moshe Rabbeinu of his generation. He is Moshe Rabbeinu of the generation. We'll talk about that soon, a little later. And the Rebbe goes on to and the Friediger Rebbe goes on to explain the connection between Mordechai and Moshe. Just like Moshe Rabbeinu fed the Emunah, developed the Emunah, nourished the Jewish people with Emunah, Mordechai HaTzadik in his generation at that crucial moment awoke the Emunah, stimulated the Emunah, strengthened the Emunah. And therefore, Mordechai HaTzadik is Moshe Rabbeinu in regarding Reya Mehemna. So the Rebbe in the Maimer says, since the Friediger Rebbe said it, Mordechai HaTzadik, hu pasak al atzmoi. He paskins this regarding himself. So if that's the case, we can definitely say that everything the Rebbe speaks about, these ginormous leaders, and what the Rebbe speaks about, the Friediger Rebbe and so on and so forth, is definitely, as the Rebbe is saying, we can definitely say it about him. That hu pasak al atzmoi, that he's paskining that this outlook, this understanding of what means a Nasi B'Yisroel, what this means, is regarding himself as well. Thirdly, take it a step further. The Rebbe actually, when he talks about the Friediger Rebbe, it's clear over and over again that he's really talking about himself. Not that he's not talking about the Friediger Rebbe. He sees himself and the Friediger Rebbe as an inseparable two neshamas that are really one neshama, that are intertwined and interwoven one with each other. Those we learn Chassidus, we know Yisroel and Malchus, they're very, very deeply connected, the sixth, the seventh, they're attached, Mashpia, Makabel, they're Malchus doesn't have anything of its own, everything it receives from its source, and therefore the Rebbe is like the Friediger Rebbe. So when the Rebbe keeps on talking about the Rebbe de Shver, and the Rebbe is inspiring our generation, for 40 years after the Friediger Rebbe's Histalkos, the Rebbe keeps on talking every time he speaks about the Rebbe, that we have to listen to the Rebbe, we have to listen to his Iroyas and to his teachings, and we have to go out across the entire world. And he's all giving it all in the name of the Rebbe de Shver, the Friediger Rebbe. He means the Rebbe de Shver as it is revealed through him. Even deeper than that, in the latter years, probably, I'm not such a bucky in all the sikhs. I can't even say I'm not such a bucky. I haven't learned probably 80% of the sikhs. So I'm not a bucky at all. But in the latter years, from the Mem Ches, and so on and so forth, that I did pay attention a lot to recently, you see that the Rebbe not only discusses himself as a continuation of the Friediger Rebbe, and therefore everything that he's saying about the Friediger Rebbe is also applying to himself, but he's actually speaking about a certain haisafa, a certain added greatness, added strength and power, and in godly strength to the continuation of the Friediger Rebbe after the Friediger Rebbe's passing, more than the Friediger Rebbe. Everything he says about the Friediger Rebbe as the Nasi of all the Jewish people, and so on and so forth, and all these unbelievable accomplishments, the Rebbe says that the continuation of the Friediger Rebbe even more. And the Rebbe, in a sense, uses the term al yedei talmidav v'shluchav. It's an interesting lashon. Through his students and his shluchim, that the Friediger Rebbe's manhigus continues after Yud Tavshin Yud. It continues. So the question is, does the Lubavitcher Rebbe talk about himself? There is a lot. There is so much, a gewalt, of what the Rebbe speaks about himself. Now you're going to say, and I know it's more like a misnagdisha question, but it's still, we have to bavar on everything. The misnagdisha question that we can ask is, and what's with anava? And what's with humility? To go ahead and stand and speak for thousands of people and speak about your power, of what you're all about, and so on and so forth. It seems to go against the idea of humility. So, again, this is mitzat, just my own little thought. Number one, Since the Rebbe is Moisei Nefesh for Klal Yisrael, he's Moisei Nefesh for the Jewish people, the inyan of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the inyan of the Rebbe, is to strengthen each and every one of us to fulfill our mission. And the Rebbe sees in each and every one of us the fulfillment of the ultimate mission for why God created the entire world, and everything is all hinged upon us. So our generation needs extraordinary power. And to help us understand and appreciate the power that we have, we need to know, and the words that the Rebbe, it comes to my mind, even though I can't quote to you right now where it's coming, but it comes to my mind in Yiddish, mit wemmen mir haben zu tun. For some reason it lists in my head that the Rebbe used such a lashon. We need to know who we're dealing with. That means that he must reveal certain things about himself that you might say is the opposite of modesty, if you can argue. His Mesiras Nefesh to empower us to understand the uniqueness of our generation and where we stand and what kind of power we have. It's important for us to know that. That's number one. Number two, once we learn a little Chassidus and we appreciate the idea of what a tzaddik really is, and that a tzaddik is egoless, and egoless is a silly word to say, he's a non-entity because he's completely subsumed and assimilated in the Eibishter's, in God. Therefore, he has no being of himself. It's precisely because of that he can talk about himself, but when he talks about himself, he's not meaning himself as chas v'sholom, an independent entity, but him as a conduit for the Eibishter, a chosen conduit which through the Eibishter expresses himself. And therefore, when he's singing his praises, he's not singing his praises, he's singing God's praises. And I'll give you a little analogy from a Polish Rebbe. The Heilige Ruzhiner. The Heilige Ruzhiner, amongst all the Rebbes, was considered to be unique. And everybody tipped their hat to the Ruzhiner. There were tremendous tzaddikim back in those days. But everybody had awe and respect to the Ruzhiner. The Ruzhiner was like from another planet. Tzemach Tzedek, generally Chabad, we had a certain, Chabad always had a certain sense that we're the best. But yet, the Tzemach Tzedek had enormous respect for the Ruzhiner. The Heilige Ruzhiner, to say what... I saw today in the Rebbe Sikha that the Rebbe says, I don't know why, the Rebbe is to bring it, that the Friediger, in the first Farbrengen, the Rebbe is talking about the Friediger Rebbe, the first Yud Shvat. The Rebbe is saying that we don't see that when the Friediger Rebbe spoke about the Orach Chaim and about the Shlah, even though the Friediger Rebbe mentioned the Shlah, and he mentioned that the Alter Rebbe was a Shlah Yid, the Alter Rebbe was a Shlah Yid, and he took a lot from the Shlah, yet he did not say, I didn't see by my father-in-law that he should say the Shlah HaKadosh, or the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. Makes note of it. Yet, it's a common expression, Heilige Ruzhiner. I don't know if anybody knows if the Heilige, that expression, the Heilige Ruzhiner, came from the Rabbeim as well. But if they did, we can understand that this is huge. In any case, the Ruzhiner once said as follows. He said that the entire Torah is contained in Sefer Bereshis. Now, let me make a pre something. The Torah is the blueprint of creation. The Torah is the blueprint of the world. We say the entire Torah is included in Bereshis. We really mean all of the universes and all the olamas and all the, which really, according to the Alter Rebbe, that's not adding praise. It's according to the Gimmel, it's actually not a big deal for the world. The Torah is infinitely greater than the world. So to say that the world, but for us, we're Gashmistic people. So when we say the worlds, we mean all of the worlds and all of existence and the sum totality of everything that exists. It's all, the Torah is its blueprint, so it's all included in the Torah. The entire Chumash is included in Sefer Bereshis. The Ruzhiner continues. Sefer Bereshis is included in Parshas Bereshis. Parshas Bereshis is all nichlal. It comes from, its source is the first pasuk in The first pasuk in Bereshis is concentrated in the first word Bereshis. The first word Bereshis is all concentrated. Can you imagine? You don't want to touch that letter. That's the letter, like it's got it all in potential. The base of Bereshis contains it all. And the entire base is nichlal, that potent base, in the pintele inside the base. That little dot, the pintele inside the base, that's the hachachma me'ayin timotze. Everything comes from there. And then the Ruzhina continued, and that pintele does binich. Here's what he says. That's my soul at that point, where obviously it means Yisroel v'iraisa v'kutcha b'richu kul echad. In that pintele, that's one story with the Ruzhina. A Torah from the Ruzhina. He said it about himself. That the pintele, that's me. My neshama is that pintele. The Ruzhina was once together with another. So you say, he speaks about himself. The Ruzhina was together with another tzaddik, Rabbi Tzvi of Savron. Big Chassidus in Russia was called the Savroner. And the Savroner complained to the Heilige Ruzhiner about the idea that he doesn't know what to do because he goes places and they give him a lot of kavod. And he struggles, and he's telling the Ruzhiner how he deals with it. How he deals with not to be influenced by all this kavod that's heaped him. He's a big Rebbe, they sing, they dance, when the wagon comes, all the Chassidim are pulling it, and it makes him uncomfortable. So how he deals with that situation. So the Ruzhiner looked at him like, and the Ruzhiner told him a story. The Ruzhiner said there was a mayor in the town. I'm not exactly telling the story as it is, but this is the Teichen. There was a mayor in the town, and everybody loved the mayor, and he was a very respected mayor. It was a small little shtetl, small little village. You know, like when you drive in Yehupitzville and you pass by and it says population 28. Now this was a little bigger. This was population 234. There's one main street and one block, and that's the mayor. Everybody respected the mayor. They liked the mayor. He's mayor already for many years. The mayor left town for a month. He traveled 2 months. And he went to the capital. And the mayor met His Highness, the king himself. And they hit it off together, the king and the mayor. He liked them. They spoke. And the king was inquiring about his town and village. As to when he's going back, and then the king said to him, you know what, I'm coming with you. I guess the king wanted to get familiar with the countryside. So here he has someone to go with. So he goes with the mayor back to the mayor's little shtetl. But you know, there was the days before WhatsApp and social media. So the king there was no way to notify the people, especially since the king didn't want this to be a public appearance. So as they're getting closer to town, he tells the mayor, he was dressed just in casual clothing, like we know in Elul Chodesh Elul, and he tells the mayor, don't tell anybody who I am. So the two of them walk into town. Now the mayor hasn't been here already for 2-3 months. The people love it. So they all go out and they run and they bow down to him. They all take their hats. They bow down to the mayor. They're showing tremendous respect. And the mayor wants to bury himself alive. He doesn't know what to do with himself. But because here's the king standing right over here, and they're giving him the honor. He feels so stupid. Literally, he feels so ludicrous. He feels so insane being heaped this honor. So the honor itself is his biggest embarrassment and shame, but he can't say anything about it. So the Ruzhiner was saying, that's how I deal with honor. And the Rebbe is here. And they're giving me honor, so obviously in Chassidus Chabad we talk deeper and higher, but this idea is the idea. And when the Rebbe talks about himself, Anasi Mana Ba'alma, he's miyuchad with the Eibishter, so it's not about himself in any way, chas v'sholem of self. It's, in any case, the Rebbe, L'chaim. Let's sing a niggin. L'chaim. Ay, ay, ay. So from all these sources, l'chaim l'bracha, everyone, the Rebbe should give us all the clarity and understanding and appreciation and connection to each other, and we should connect in the deepest way to Makor Chayenu, to the source of our life. And we should be zoichet to see already Malkeinu Bereishenu, and full his galus of the Rebbe, le'enei kol ha'amim, le'enei kol ha'olam kulo, l'chaim l'bracha. So, before we go into details, as I mentioned, that the Rebbe, there's so much that the Rebbe says about Rebbe. And obviously that gives us a pneumistic understanding on Rebbe, shaloi be'erech, infinitely more than what we're going to read in books, or this one said or that one said. And that's why tonight I really don't want to tell stories or so on and so forth. It's a lot of exciting things to say, but it's not about that. I think it's important for us to appreciate and understand as we're as Chassidim, and particularly we get to this time when the heart's banked, when the heart is yearning and we're seeking to connect, and the time period of Gimmel Tammuz, that we should appreciate and understand what we're longing for, and what and the Rebbe taught us what we're longing for. So one thing we find all across in the Rebbe's talks, where he's talking about the Rabbeim, talking about himself, is that the Rebbe did not and does not see himself as the Chabad Rabbeim, as some great, from the Gedolei Yisroel, from the great rabbis of the Jewish people, from the great leaders of the Jewish people. As one of the great leaders, as one of the great, the Jewish people is rich with incredible personalities. There are incredible tzaddikim and great people, but the Rebbe never ever, the Rebbe doesn't, if you look, what the Rebbe is saying is the Rebbe doesn't describe the Friediger Rebbe and so on and so forth as a special great tzaddik. In all of the talks that you see how the Rebbe is describing the Baal Shem Tov, the Chassidus or the Rabbeim of Chabad, and primarily the Friediger Rebbe, it's clear that the Rebbe sees in them as people that are playing a cosmic role. And we say of cosmic role, meaning a cosmic role of biblical significance, of biblical proportion. Not only that they're the ones that mold and shape existence into the final conclusion for what the world was created for. And there is absolutely no way that anybody can learn the sichos of the Rebbe when the Rebbe talks about the Rabbeim and see it differently. The Rebbe says it again and again and again and again, how the purpose of creation and the unfolding and the whole Seder Ishtalshalos, the whole purpose of Torah mitzvahs and the like, it all has a certain purpose. It's all leading towards somewhere, towards a certain destination and a certain goal. And the last and final stages of that process is moved along by the Rabbeim of Chabad and by the previous Rebbe. And as we said before, when the Rebbe alludes to himself about his leadership, and that this is crucial on a magnificent scale, on the ultimate purpose, which, by the way, it lies at the root core of the idea, which is difficult for people to process. If you haven't learned Chassidus, it's a little hard to process this because people are very, very misled in the non-Chassidic world by the notion of Yeridas Adoros. And that is that the generations become weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. It follows a philosophy that also says that the world keeps on getting more corrupt and darker and darker and darker and darker. And for some reason, I never digested that. It didn't sit well within me. It didn't speak to my soul because I'm just trying to figure out who in the world would want to sign up with a company that's going bankrupt. It doesn't make any sense. In the end, there will be some kind of a savior that will come at the last moment. God will save his planet, but we're not accomplishing anything. We're only becoming corrupted. Maybe the accomplishment is that we're going through very difficult tests and we're holding strong, but we're not really doing anything because the world is not getting better. The world is only getting worse and darker, and we're all becoming less and less and lower and lower. In Chassidus, and especially in the Rebbe's teachings, more than anywhere else, he flips the whole thing over. And he explains how really the world and this is continuously becoming more refined and holier. And obviously it's a Kabbalistic concept based on the Arizal and purification and so on and so forth. Torah mitzvahs fixes the world and the world gets higher and higher. And even this that we're going through darker places is because after we finish fixing the higher parts of the world, the Eibishter is directing the Jewish people to lower places so that we can fix even lower parts of creation. Because the ultimate purpose is that we should fix the lowest of the low. And yet, of course, in order to fix something, you have to enter into the kishkis of it. You have to go inside it. You have to enter into that darkened state. And as a result of that, it causes a constriction on you. It darkens your soul. It makes you a little bit more... But that's very chitzoniistic. That's very external. Internally, the real superheroes, the real super Jews are the Jews of the last generation. Because they're plowing through the hardest darkness. And in a sense, they're exercising powers. They're pumping, they're unearthing powers in the Jewish experience, in the Jewish neshama that has never been tapped into throughout all the generations. In that sense, we're becoming higher, even though our davening is not as rich. It's not as our learning is not as rich. As we would say like this, we're becoming infinitely deeper Jews, even though we're not as rich in flavor as they were in the earlier generations. But that philosophy obviously makes sense, because there is a goal, we're moving, we're accomplishing, we're doing something. And then, included in that is that the nasi of the generation keeps on getting higher and higher and higher, not lower and lower. And just this idea is a hard what is it called? A hard pill to swallow for many people that did not have a Chassidic upbringing. Because when you start hearing such talk from Chassidim about the greatness of a Rebbe and where we're talking about what kind of, and what I'm saying tonight is not what I'm saying about the Rebbe, but what the Rebbe says about the Rebbe. And you hear these things, you say, Gewalt, how's it possible? This goes against everything I learned. Everything I learned from the day I went to Cheder, that the Yiddishkeit once happened, the great rabbis were once upon a time, it once was all upon a time. Now you have tzaddikim, fine people, and less, but they once was. You can't compare the people of our generation. It's like one of the cardinal sins if you compare a rabbi now to someone like that. It was biblical times was then. Chassidus sees it differently. So the Rebbe definitely looks at the previous Rebbe, at the Chabad Rebbeim, as the Baal Shem Tov, as those who are the ones who drive the world to its ultimate perfection, to its ultimate goal. And in countless sichos, the Rebbe is saying how he, meaning his leadership, and his work that he does with us, with our generation, are the actual grand finalists, those who finish it, who complete the job. And not only that finished the job, but have completed the job in the later years. We finished it. We've done it already. We've completed which all generations were working towards. And therefore, we actually elevate all of the past generations. All the past generations are elevated by us and through the leader of the last generation. Therefore, it's very important to realize that all the talk that we always hear about the Rebbe, speaks about the Rebbe as a great Gadol b'Yisrael, as a great tzaddik, as a great leader, and therefore he too could be considered as one of the giant super leaders. And even if we'll say it a step deeper, we say that the Rebbe came along at the time when the Jewish people were broken, at the most difficult times, and he saved the Jewish people. You have to have this special super neshama that can come down at such a broken generation, and he saved the Jewish people. And therefore, his work is definitely leaves a mark and indented. It leaves a powerful influence on Judaism for all of time. The Lubavitcher Rebbe. And as a result of that, we talk about the Rebbe's legacy and so on and so forth. It's great. It's wonderful. It's wonderful things. But you know what it is? It's Parsha Zu Yafa Nidreshes. It's nice drush. It's not cutting to the core. It's not the emes la'amitoy. It's true things. It's human knowledge. It's human thinking. It's not godly thinking. Godly thinking, we only have one place. When we hear Divrei Elokim Chaim, we hear from the Lubavitcher Rebbe teaching us what the Lubavitcher Rebbe is all about. So number one, the first thing, when we start analyze, now obviously we can't go through everything the Rebbe says about a Rebbe in one Farbrengen, but just a few nekudas. The first thing the Rebbe speaks about when he's talking about himself, again, the Rebbe is usually talking about the Friediger Rebbe, but as he speaks about the Friediger Rebbe and includes himself in it, the Rebbe is talking all the time that the Rebbe is Nasi Hador. He's the leader of a generation. And he unabashedly says it again and again and again for 40 years, from a microphone that's televised, that's sent across the entire world, and his works are printed, and he doesn't stop relentlessly saying again and again and again, the Rebbe the Shver is the Nasi Hador, the leader of the generation. The Rebbe clearly knew that perhaps many frum Jews in the world don't see it that way. Not necessarily the Mayatzi Gedolei HaTorah or Agudas Yisroel or whatever sees the Lubavitcher Rebbe as the quintessential leader of the Jewish people. But that didn't change the Rebbe's approach, and he's saying over and over again that the Rebbe is the Nasi Hador, the leader of the generation. Those who are honest amongst in the Jewish world today, after, we're talking about 60 years ago, it was debatable. The Lubavitcher Rebbe had his own style, and the rest of the other great leaders building yeshivos and so on and so forth. But anybody that looks at the Jewish people as a whole, not as a certain community, as one particular group living in this yeshivish world, a chassidish world, or this kind of world, or that kind of world, but looks at Judaism and looks at the world globally, can clearly see that the Rebbe is the leader of the generation. Meaning he's the one that's looking out for every Jew across the planet. And every Jew across the planet, if he had any need and any bayan, any problem, anything that he needed attention, anything he needed help, the address to turn to before any other address, the place to go to for any problem amongst the Jewish people, is central location is 770, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. That's if people, of course, obviously, you need a certain amount of honesty to be able to admit to that, but that's the emes. And when we say that the Rebbe is Nasi Hador, what does that mean? It doesn't just mean that he is the one who cares about the people of the generation, looks out for all the people in the generation. It really means something much deeper. It really means something much deeper on a soul level. It means that all neshamis of the Jew, it means, what it really means is, I'm saying it doesn't mean the whole, one of the explanations of it, rather, I should say, is that Nasi Hador means that he's a neshama koleles. And neshama koleles means that he literally incorporates within himself all neshamas of the Jewish people. And they connect to the Eibishter through his neshama. Chassidism is very, very strongly built and emphasizes the idea of achdus of all neshamas Yisrael. All neshamas, Chassidism teaches are chelek elokayim imal mamish. If neshamas are all rooted in Hashem Echad, what does that mean? That all neshamas are really one neshama. And in that one neshama, the neshama is in its tziyur has a certain form of a man, of a human soul. And in the human soul, there is the brain, and then there is the rest of the body of the neshama. And in that sense, a neshama kaleles means the brain of all the Jewish people. The inner, and therefore he's the source and root of all neshamas, and all neshamas connect to the Eibishter through his neshama, meaning they're all part of his neshama. And therefore, the Rebbe says this in many places, every hashpah that comes to the world, to the Jewish people, is coming through the neshama, via the neshama of the Nasi Hador, of the leader of the generation. That means every hashpah begashmias, physical hashpahs, the brachas that people receive from the Eibishter. They're not receiving they're feeding the bracha from the Eibishter. But that bracha is being channeled through, it's just like anything that you get in your life, first enters through your brain, and from your brain it's delivered to the other parts of your body. So everything that's coming to the Jewish people, to the Jewish people as a whole, both physically and spiritually, every inspiration, every ruchniistige light, every new, in a sense, idea, every new energy, every new avodah, every empowerment that the Eibishter is giving, and Hashem is machadish betuvay, every day is giving new power, he's giving new Torah to the world. All of that is flowing through this super neshama, and where all neshamas are connected to this neshama. Again, those that are not comfortable, those who are not comfortable with Chassidus have a little bit of a problem with that, because that would almost seem to be that there is a mamutza, there is some entity that's between us and Hashem, and we know that in one of the 13 Ikrei Amunah that we don't daven to any other being but the Eibishter. Everybody, we don't pray to anybody else, only the Eibishter. And what's this idea of having some kind of a mediator or a medium you're going through? So which I think already the Chassam Sofer takes care of. The Chassam Sofer in his Tshuvas has a problem. What's the idea of going to daven in Kivrei Tzadikim? Why do you go daven at graves of tzaddikim if you can only daven Roy Lo Lispalel? We can only daven to the Eibishter himself, Loy Levad, and anybody else. So many people say it means you're going to daven to the Eibishter b'schus the tzaddik. But we know that today's days you have thousands and thousands and thousands of people that in today's days travel across the world to all the great tzaddikim. People go to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, and people go to ask Reb Shimon. And therefore they have a baby, they name him Reb Shimon. And how many miracles do we have? People went to Miron and promised Reb Shimon didn't have children for 20 years, and that year they had a baby. People travel to Rabbi Nachman, and people travel to lately everybody's going to the new Reb Shaila Kerstira, everybody travels and goes. And people are davening. So the Chassam Sofer says, the reason is, he says, because all neshamas are one entity, and therefore, if your foot hurts and you're praying through your brain or through your mouth, it's not a problem like you're using some entity. You're davening through yourself. Since all Yidden are one kaima shleima, and the nasi, the leader, is like the head, so the prayer is not considered as if it's coming through someone else. So the Rebbe clearly says in many places that every hashpah has to come through the nasi, hador, the leader of the generation. Everything. And he says by Moshe Rabbeinu last week in the parsha, the Jewish people complained that they wanted meat, and Moshe Rabbeinu said, "Maayon li basar, where do I have meat?" So they're not asking Moshe for meat; they're asking the Eibishter for meat. Why is Moshe saying Maayon li? I have to give them. What do you mean? I don't know. So the Rebbe explains, and Chassidus it explains, that since every hashpah has to go through the it's coming from the Eibishter, but it has to go through the tzaddik. Moshe Rabbeinu was such a lofty neshama, he was so holy and so godly that he could not be mashpia basar. Why? Basar was considered too low for him. Meat, flesh, you have to eat bread. You want a little butter on the bread, eat butter on the bread, but you're such a fagrepte thing, you need meat, you need steak. He couldn't relate to that. And therefore Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want to give them meat. He said, I can't give them meat. So So the Eibishter said, you'll give them the meat through you, through the 70s Akanim, kind of the hashpol will drop down lower, so it'll be shayach to meat. But everything must go through the Nasi Hadar. Everything. Hashpol, ruchnius hashpol. That's why the Rebbe, it's interesting. That's why the Rebbe felt it's an obligation on Chabad Chassidim to bring, literally, the Rebbe felt it's a duty, Chassidim to make aware to the people of the generation that there is a Rebbe be Yisroel. That there is a Rebbe. And it's crucial. Because really the hashpah is coming from the Nasi Hadar to everybody, whether they're aware of it or not. But when they plug in consciously, the hashpah is far more intense. There's a famous letter that the Rebbe writes in Chelek Gimmel, the Rebbe writes in Igris, the Rebbe writes to Rabbi Shlomo Chaim Kesselman back in France. The Zikna Chassidim after the wars, the survivors ended up in France, and in a camp. What was it called? Called Peking. It was a DP camp, and they were there, and the Rebbe was saying that the Chassidim are amongst all these other people. The Rebbe wanted of them to speak to the people about the Rebbe, and the Rebbe writes to him a very sharp letter. That you're older Chassidim, you're oisek and avodah, you're davening, you're learning, you're doing all kinds of things. But your main mission of why the Eibishter put you amongst all these Jews, you're not doing. You're not bringing them, he's not talking about himself, he's talking about the Friediger Rebbe. You have to bring them to the previous Rebbe. And he says, literally, it's a cruelty, he says. It's literally a cruelty. Because for these people, it would be a lifesaver, that they can plug their neshama into the Makor Chayenu. If you look at the letter, it's an amazing letter with very, very powerful words. It's one of the rare occasions you get to see the Rebbe clearly giving us a description of what a Rebbe is, because he's talking about the Friediger Rebbe and demanding of the Chassidim that they should plug in, that they should bring people to the previous Rebbe. So the Rebbe sees, and obviously we understand. Today's days it's easier to understand. Today's days this idea is easier to understand because, what do you mean my neshama is plugged into a person? He's thousands of miles away. So today we all know what it means when there is when you need it. We need a signal. You need a signal. In the atmosphere there is all the great information that's there. But you can't plug in unless you have a Wi-Fi code. And when you have the Wi-Fi code and you plug in and you get Wi-Fi, suddenly everything changes. You ever have a situation where you were offline for a few hours and you get so frustrated because who's calling and you realize none of your emails are coming in and none of your WhatsApps are coming in, Gewalt, who knows what's happening. And finally you get to a place and there's no internet, but you get to a place and you can, you get to a hotel and you get the code, you plug it in, and in 1 second, boom, you have 30 messages and you have people from here and from that and all came in. Why? The minute you plugged in, bang. It's a ruchniistic thing, meaning a spiritual thing. You don't see it. There's no wires. There's no cable that's connecting. Some kind of thing in the outer atmosphere that when you're plugging in this on this frequency, putting in this code, you're tapping into it and it's coming in. Every time a chassid plugs into a Rebbe, there are certain spiritual goodies that the Eibishter is bestowing upon the Jewish people that day, that time, coming through the channel of a Rebbe, and without that Wi-Fi code, you're not getting it. Or maybe you're getting, but you're getting very schwach. But you do whatever, you're plugging in consciously to the tzaddik, bang, you're filled. You know what happens sometimes? You ever see when you hit the Wi-Fi, so you have a whole bunch of apps that need downloading, they need to be upgraded to the newer version. So you see at the phone when you get into a good Wi-Fi, it's showing you this app is upgraded and that's upgraded and that's upgraded. So we don't realize how many spiritual powers are upgraded in our soul as a result of plugging into the Nasi Hadar. On the question that I mentioned before, it still feels a little funny and strange to many people, this idea that there has to be someone that we're plugging into. What's with the good old Eibishter that Jews always know that you plug directly into God? So let me share with you something that I saw today that was so amazingly beautiful. The Rebbe in Farbrengen on Yud Beis Tammuz. The first Yud Beis Tammuz that the Rebbe is officially Rebbe. So on Yud Beis Tammuz, the Rebbe in Farbrengen. And the Rebbe mentions in the Farbrengen over there, an astounding thing. He said he mentioned something on Yud Shvat a few months earlier. The Rebbe said that it caused a firestorm. What happened? The Rebbe mentioned that even though the Gemara says that there are 3 keys, hear this, 3 keys that the Eibishter does not give to anybody. 3 keys that God keeps private. What are those 3 keys? The key to childbirth, the key to rain, and the key to Tchias HaMesim, to resurrection. These are the 3 keys. Hashem has many, many goodies, and He has different appointees that work for Him. And they're in charge. Meaning, of course, everything has to get the approval of the Eibishter and directed by the Eibishter, but still there's considered an idea that there is certain memunim that are in charge of various different things. These 3 things, the Eibishter keeps it on his own keychain. He doesn't give it all away to anybody. So the Gemara says the story as follows. The Gemara says a story like this by Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi, the Gemara Masechta Sanhedrin, Taf Kuf Yud Gimmel, the Gemara relates as follows. That Eliyahu Hanavi wanted to stop rain because there was, again, people were serving idols, and as a punishment, as a manner of rebuke, Eliyahu Hanavi wanted to stop the rains. So he davened to the Eibishter, please give me the key for rain. So the Eibishter handed him that key. So Eliyahu Hanavi locked the flow, the piping. He shut it down and finished. No rain. He shut the plumbing. Garnished. No, it says the Eibishter saw after a while that a certain river dried up, and the people were having a lot of pain, and the Eibishter didn't like what Eliyahu Hanavi did. So the Eibishter says, I got to get my key back. How do I get my key back? So the Eibishter says this. So the Eibishter was, Rashi says it, the Eibishter was mesaviv sibois that Eliyahu Hanavi should need something else. What happened? The Eibishter sends Eliyahu Hanavi to go to a certain place, and over there he meets this woman, and she has a child who's very ill. And I don't know if the child died already or whatever, because in the Gemara I didn't get a chance. I looked up the Gemara, but I didn't get a chance to look up the story in the Navi. And me and Belz and Bluzhev, we didn't learn any Navi, so I'm an ignoramus when it comes to Navi. In any case, I don't know the story what happened exactly. But he came and he met this girl. I don't want the Belz Chassidic to get upset about me, but the emes is, in the Chassidish Chedarim we didn't learn Navi. They were afraid that the Navi's stories would make us all apikarsim, so we shouldn't read those stories. In any case, Eliyahu Hanavi prayed. He wanted to make Tchias HaMesim, or he needed to heal the person. So he davened to the Eibishter for the key for Tchias HaMesim. Hand me the key. So the Eibishter said it says in the Gemara, they let him know as follows: that there are 3 keys that only the Eibishter has, and he gave you one already. If he gives you the other one, the student is going to have 2, but the master is going to have 1. That's not good. That means the student is going to have more than the master. So therefore, they said, give me back that one, we'll give you this one. So Eliyahu Hanavi was forced to give back the key for rain, and he got the key for Tchias HaMesim. That's what it says. The Rebbe by the Farbrengen said that even though it says in the Gemara that by Eliyahu Hanavi, that he couldn't have more than 1 key because the Eibishter keeps the key, but there are tzaddikim who have more than 1 key. And the Rebbe says, what's the proof? What's the proof? The proof is that the Rebbe sits by Yechidus, and in a course of a half an hour, 3 people come into Yechidus. One guy needs parnasa, the other person needs children, the other person needs Tchias HaMesim, someone, the doctors gave up on this person. They need 3 individual things. And the Rebbe goes through the Yechidus and gives this one this and this one that, and it's all within 1 period. No time for him to sit and exchange with the Eibishter every time. Give me this key, I'll give you back that key. That's what happened if you watch the Rebbe's dollars. Take 15 minutes of the Rebbe's dollars. How many people went by with how many problems, but how many brachas were there? How many miracles? How many miracles happened in a course of 10 minutes going through the Rebbe? You see, this one and this, that one and that, amazing things. And some of these miracles happened 20 years later, as I've seen by myself and so on and so forth. It's unbelievable. The miracles are rolling like crazy. So the Rebbe says, because the Rebbe has more than one key. So the Rebbe says, I said this in the Yud Shvat Farbrengen, and there was such a fire, the world went crazy. The Rebbe says, and I thought that they got upset. I thought they were upset at me because I said something opposite to the Gemara. The Gemara says that what? That you can't have more than one key. That a tzaddik doesn't get more than one key. And I'm saying that the Rebbe does get more than one key. But then I realized that that's not even the question they asked. They were asking, how can I say the Rebbe is greater than Eliyahu Hanavi? That bothers them. There says the Gemara is an Ishkevenka Kasha. I don't know, what does the Rebbe mean by that? I was reading it today. I was saying that most people, when they have questions, their questions are more emotional, not objection. Not objective questions. There are questions, Taka, you can ask and you need answers. But most people have a problem with Chabad because of this, a problem with that. Usually these things are not coming from a very learned place. They're coming from just an emotional, from a preconceived notions. And so on and so on. The people have a problem. People have a question. You see it in this case. They couldn't stand the idea that the Rebbe is Kiviyachol saying that a tzaddik is greater than Eliyahu Hanavi. So the Rebbe answers. And he first tackles the question that was bothering the people. That the people are asking, how can a Rebbe be greater than Eliyahu Hanavi? So the Rebbe says like this. We all understand that when there is a watchman and a thing that's being watched, the thing that's being watched is more precious than the watchman. For example, the president has a security around him. The security guards, the Secret Service, they will take the bullet for the president. Why? Because they are of less significance. Today's days, they'll argue differently in America. But they are of less significance than the president. So the watchman is of lesser value than the one being watched. Same, he says, is when somebody is mishtamish, someone uses something, another person or for something, sends him on a mission, the sender is on a higher level than the one that's being sent. Okay? So here it says an interesting thing. The Gemara says, the Zohar says, that tzaddikim, hear this Gavaldik thing, tzaddikim, they send Eliyahu Hanavi constantly on missions. Tzaddikim send Eliyahu Hanavi on missions when they need to find out what's happening in heaven. Or whatever missions they send Eliyahu Hanavi. The Rebbe says, if tzaddikim send Eliyahu Hanavi on missions, that means he's working for them, he's employed by them. Mizdach Zayin, that these tzaddikim who can send Eliyahu Hanavi on missions, they're greater than Eliyahu Hanavi, because Eliyahu Hanavi works for them. That's the Rebbe's answer. And the Rebbe says, and really the Rebbe smiled. This is so amazing. What goes on by your Farbrengen. The Rebbe gives a chuckle, and the Rebbe laughs, and the Rebbe says, and truth is we don't want to offend Eliyahu Hanavi, because Eliyahu Hanavi is known to be a captain. He can get insulted, he can get upset. And he proves from the Gemara that Eliyahu Hanavi can be a captain. But the Rebbe said, being that we're saying this as a Chassidische Farbrengen, after some mashke, mir hoffen, as wird durchgehen glattig. We hope something that it will go through, it will pass without any problems. In other words, we can get away with saying this. That's what the Rebbe says. By the way, I'll stop right over here. How many people do you know in your life that can tell you a story that they met Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu Hanavi? Who do you know? Go over to a Yid in New York, say, let's get to any Yid. Say, you've definitely, whoa! Says the Lubavitcher Rebbe in this Farbrengen. If you met the Rebbe, you met somebody infinitely bigger, not infinitely greater than Eliyahu Hanavi. He's saying over there that Eliyahu, he's talking about, again, I'm going back to the idea that the Rebbe is talking the whole time. He's talking about, actually, in this case, he's talking about his father-in-law. And the Rebbe is saying that my kasha about Eliyahu Hanavi only having one key, and the Rebbe and the Friediger Rebbe having all three keys, is not a kasha mitzad being bigger than Eliyahu Hanavi, because you find that tzaddikim are mishtaleach with it. But he says, but the ikr, the kasha of the Gemara is still a question. The Gemara says the Eibishter will not give over his keys more than one to anybody. So the Rebbe says the answer, this is Peladigi answer. The Rebbe says, this that we say in the Gemara that the Eibishter does not give over a key is only as a shliach. The Eibishter will not give the key over like nimsar l'shliach to a shliach. A shliach is someone who's working on behalf of you. It's an agent. even though the idea is that what we say, shluchai shel adam k'moisai, that the shliach of a person is like the person. That means when you're giving someone a key and he's your shliach, it's as if it never left because it's yours. But he says it's not you mamish, it's k'moisai. How do you see that? Can your shliach put on tefillin for you? Say, I'm tired, I'm going to sleep through the day. You be my shliach, you put on tefillin for me today. It doesn't work. You have to put on, if you have a vow and you want to need hataris neder, you need to be matter the neder, a shliach can't be matter your neder. Things shebegufa you can't give over by a shliach. So you see that a shliach is like you, but not exactly mamish you. If that's the case, the Rebbe says, that's why the Eibishter never gives over the key to a shliach. But the Rebbe asks a question. Can the Eibishter himself use all three keys together simultaneously? Obviously, we understand he could. Could the Eibishter execute the usage of these three keys through a tzaddik, through a person? If the Eibishter is the one that's doing it, not the tzaddik, can he do it? The Rebbe says, of course. The Eibishter, the Rebbe says three things. He can do it through a tzaddik, he can do it through a malach, and he can even do it through a physical object. As long as it's the Eibishter doing it, it's not that the person is doing it, it's him doing it. He's doing it through him. So the Rebbe says like this. Our relationship between Yidden and the Eibishter is that God is our father and we're his children. Banim. In the parent-child relationship, we find that you have to respect your parents. You're supposed to do a whole lot of things for your parents. But one thing you're not obligated with your parents. You know what you're not obligated with your parents? You're not obligated to sacrifice your life for your parents. You don't have to die chas v'shalom for your parent. No obligation. In Torah, kibbut of aim does not mean you should die on behalf of your parents. But we do know we have a mitzvah to die for God's name. Why are we obligated? If we're the Eibishter's children, why are we obligated to sacrifice our life for the sake of the Eibishter when we're not obligated to do that to our parents if our relationship is a parent-child? And the Rebbe answers as follows, what it says in Chassidus, that a parent and a child are really one entity. Parent and child are one entity, but that's before the child is born. Once the child is born, your child becomes separated from you and they become an entity on their own. They become a metzius on their own. Since they are a being on their own, they don't have to destroy their existence for your existence because they now have an independent existence. Yes, they began as being part of you, but now they have a reality on their own, so they don't have to erase their existence for your existence. But by Yidden and the Eibishter, what the Rebbe says, by Yidden and the Eibishter, we are bonim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem. We are part of the Eibishter's. We come from the Eibishter's chachma, and we remain. Hear this. We remain the Eibishter's chachma even after we go into a body. We're still a chelik l'kaim imal mamish. We're still a piece of him. Our neshama never becomes an existence onto its own. And since the Eibishter is one with his chachma, that means that the Eibishter and the Jew, God and the Jew, remain absolutely one. It's not like you're much closer to God than you are to your parent. Your parent is someone other than you. Eibishter and you are totally one. God and you are one. But that's not experienced in our consciousness. That is the truth of our essence, of our deepest point, of our nucleus of our soul, and our inner core. You and the Eibishter are one, but you don't feel yourself that way. If you would be one with the Eibishter, then you wouldn't want salami ever, or I don't know what, or corned beef, because that's not necessarily what the Eibishter's desire is right now, or at any time. The fact that we have our own desires, our own wants, our own cares, our own agenda, our own stuff, is because we feel very much a part of him, separated from him. But then the Rebbe says there are tzaddikim that they have stripped away the outer layers of their soul, their outer layers of beingness, and they've exposed their neshama where it is completely one with Hashem. And the Rebbe says in practical terms, what does that mean? These tzaddikim they serve Hashem like a simple servant or like a devoted servant to the point, hear these words, where they have eradicated any sense of pleasure of their own. they have so identified with God that their only pleasure in life is God's pleasure. What's the litmus test? If you lost your own existence and you become part of His existence, is if your pleasure is no more your pleasure, it's His pleasure. It's almost like that they're just an extended body, and where the Eibishter's experiences through their body. That's why they're not feeling their own pleasure. If they don't have their own pleasure in life, pleasure is the deepest experience. If they don't have their own pleasure, only God's pleasure, so when they have a drive, what does pleasure do? Pleasure drives drive, ratzon. So if their pleasure is the Eibishter's pleasure, so their ratzon is whose ratzon? The Eibishter's ratzon. If the Eibishter is their only drive, then they're acting just as a channel for the Eibishter. They're not a being. The Rebbe says, such are tzaddikim like Reb Shimon ben Yochai. Well, therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says in the Zohar, that when it says 3 times a year you should go see the face of God, I wonder if this is the same Rabbi Yehuda from Baba Kama. Because if this is the same Rabbi Yehuda, and I think it is, from Baba Kama and Baba Metzia and Baba Basra, if it is the same Rabbi Yehuda from all over Shas, they would excommunicate him in all the yeshivas. They wouldn't learn it anymore. Because Rabbi Yehuda says like this: you want to go see Pnei Adon Hashem, man Pnei Adon Darash Bi. Go to Reb Shimon ben Yochai, look at him on Shalosh Regalim. Go look at Reb Shimon ben Yochai, look at his face, and you're looking at the Eibishter. So what does that mean? Because Reb Shimon ben Yochai has no will of his own. He completely emptied himself out of himself, and he is now a Gentile can't do that, but every Jew be'etzem is that way, because our neshamas never separated. Our neshamas are Him. We, however, have layers of identity that obscure and hide that truth. The tzaddik removes those layers. He strips that. He strips those outer layers down to his core, to the part of him that never left Hashem. So he is Hashem. Meaning to say, he's not a Metzias onto his own, purely divine. Therefore, the Rebbe says, it's for that reason, such tzaddikim, that when the Eibishter gives them the key, he's not giving it to them, because they're him. And that's why they have the Eibishter's keys, all 3 of them. No problem, because it's God doing it, not them doing it. So the Rebbe says these words. I'm going to read it to you. I think, whoa. I was so shocked when I'm shocked because I knew this idea. But the Rebbe says it over here. Listen to these words. In Yud Beis Tammuz, Tavshin Aleph. They're the anoichi that stands between Hashem and you. They are a mamutza. They are an intermediator, but they're not an intermediator that has any identity. They're just one. When you go into the Rebbe for a private audience, when you get an answer, when you go ask a Rebbe, and you're getting the answer, Shanoisen HaKadosh Baruch Hu, der Enfer was der Eibishter git alle arein b'nishmasei shel tzaddik. The Eibishter gives you the answer, but he drops it into the neshama of the tzaddik, because the neshama of the tzaddik is one with you, with him, and from him, Kafisha Rebbe Omar Pam, like the Friediger Rebbe once said, Shahamayna b'yechidus u'miyechidus shebenefesh. That the answer that comes in Yechidus is from the deepest point of the tzaddik's neshama, Yechida shebenefesh. Das entfert Yechida shebenefesh. Yechida is answering. Val Shem ze nekras aknisa la Rebbe. Why is it called? In Chabad, how do we call the private audience with the Rebbe? We call it Yechidus. Because kiven shamaynu mebchinas ha-Yechida, it's coming from Yechida. And why is it called Yechida? Because it's mekabel from Yochid. And therefore, ubemela, when we go into Yechidus, regarding a key of life, a key of rain, a key of Tchias HaMeisim. Since, he says, Kivon shezeh sheyoyshev v'oyna ala yechidus, the person sitting on that chair and is answering by yechidus, he yechida shebenefesh, is the yechida, the point of soul that's totally one with God, shechuvuka v'dugabach, noisten biyadai kol Gimmel amafteiches. All 3 keys are given to him. So this kind of gives this understanding of how the Rebbe looks at himself as a Rebbe, as the Rabbeim, the Friediger Rebbe. We're dealing with a perfect channel that has no blockage, doesn't have the tiniest, taintedest, smallest, even subtlest of subtlest, benign element of self, and therefore it's a complete channel to the Eibishter. And therefore, what does this mean? That all Chassidim and all the Jewish people whose neshamas are plugged into the neshama of a Rebbe, through the Rebbe, they're plugged into God in a way that's so magnificent. You'll say, well, okay, that's true. A Rebbe is a channel, but I can go maybe and collect directly to the Eibishter. So the emes is two things. Number one, even if you think you're not connecting through a Rebbe, we're all connecting to the Rebbe. That's just the way it is, because every hashpah comes through this nasi and the tzaddik. And secondly, the empowerment you get to do things that are really, and aside for the brachas and gashmias, I'm not talking about material blessings, but the ruchniistige empowerment that people get when they're plugged in to do things that are extraordinarily difficult, but yet they're able to accomplish unbelievable things, is dafka when they're makush. I mean, it's no secret. I'm just going to conclude with this now. We have a lot more to talk later in the Farbrengen, but when you take a look at the Jewish world, and you look at the phenomenon of Chabad Chassidic, Chabad Chassidim across the world generally are people in the same way like all from Yidden, Shoyme Torah mitzvahs, keep Torah, keep mitzvahs. And are good Jews, some more scholarly, some less scholarly, have much bigger some you have big Talmidei Chachamim in different places that learn a lot, that know a lot. Something very unique about Lubavitcher Chassidim is that the Rebbe has done something unbelievable, in which there are, I don't know how many, there's 5,000 shluchim together with their families. I don't know, talking about, and there's more. There's those that are listed as shluchim and those that aren't listed. So if you put it all together, you have an operation of about 20,000 people, or maybe more, 30,000 people across the world that have taken upon themselves to devote their lives and put themselves through the most difficult situations in order to realize a certain mission. And it's not easy. People think it's nice and easy. Going in the middle of a place where there's nowhere there. And it's not going to visit for a week, where you bring along frozen milk for your coffee, so if you want Chalav Yisroel, and you bring yourself all today. Everything is made possible. Every possible taiva you have that's made when we're traveling. We all make sure we're comfortable. People, and especially not, we're talking about 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, going on shlichus was like, today's day is still in difficult places, but in general, people and devoted themselves, not for a week, not for a month, for a year, sacrificed both their physical comforts and spiritual comforts. Something like this is not possible. You can't do this as an ordinary human being without getliche infinite koiches. You cannot do it. You just can't do it. It's because eskashrus to a Rebbe plants in your neshama such koiches, such inyanim, that you get only through this eskashrus, through the super soul that's plugged in to the Chai HaChayim, to the Eibishter himself, in that manner. So that the Eibishter help us all to be connected and deeply connected. The neshama kolelas, Nasi Hador bepashtus mamish, remains Nasi Hador. The Rebbe says, I saw today in a sikha that the Rebbe says about the Friediger Rebbe, he says, he is the Nasi Hador bias Mashiach Tzedkein. And obviously, our statement that bias Mashiach Tzedkein is immediately realized with the Friediger Rebbe transitioning into the Rebbe and so on and so forth. So that's already fulfilled already in Tafshin Yud Aleph. Chayim ula bracha. tell you a story. Chaim. When the Rebbe spoke, a recurring theme in the Sichos of the Rebbe all the time, we talk about Nasi, Hador, the leader of the generation. The Rebbe always mentions the first leader, and that is Moshe Rabbeinu. But the Rebbe says that the Rebbe is not only Nasi Hador, but he says, based on the Zohar, there is a Spashtus of the Moshe B'chol Dara, there's a Hispashtus of Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation. And therefore, the Nasi Hador is Moshe Rabbeinu. We always understand it to mean it's a nitzutz of Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu, like, Lo Kam Ke Moshe, no one like Moshe, and a Rebbe is a little nitzutz of Moshe. But the Rebbe very strongly emphasized, especially when it comes to the last generation. The Rebbe says this is true. In Tanya it says nitzutzis go down for Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation, the leaders of the generation. But then, be'ikr, there's the idea that Moshe Rabbeinu is Goyal Rishon and Moshe Rabbeinu is Goyal Achron. Moshe Rabbeinu is the first redeemer and he's the last redeemer. And therefore Moshe Rabbeinu shows up primarily in the last generation. And the Rebbe says in the Nasi Hador of the last generation, B'dor Achron, really says so in Zohar, that Moshe Rabbeinu is the most present in the last generation before Mashiach comes. So I saw a story today, maybe you know more of the details of it. I don't remember the names that I saw. Just an interesting idea. What the Rebbe says doesn't need any haskama, but it's an interesting story that the Baba Sali had either a son-in-law or a nephew. And this story happened with either his son-in-law or his nephew's brother. When I read the story, I read it briefly and then I couldn't find where I read it. Somehow it disappeared. It flashed and it disappeared. So there it said a name, and I wanted to go back and reread the name of who this was. I didn't get, but the story is printed. I just don't know where. I saw it online, but it's somewhere. In any case, and it sounds legit if you find out more the details of it. It's just very special. So he says that he used to go to Farbrengens. I think when there was hookups, when the Rebbe would talk. He lived in Israel, Eretz Yisroel. He would always go to hear the Farbrengen. One time after hearing the Rebbe's Farbrengen, he went to the Baba Sali. And he sat down, the Baba Sali was sleeping. It was the middle of the night. And he sat down at like the edge of the bed where the Baba Sali was sleeping. The Baba Sali woke up and looks at him and he says, "What are you here?" He said, "I came to say Tikkun Chatzos with you." I guess he used to... And then the Baba Sali said to him, he said, I'm coming now from the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Farbrengen. So and he repeated. The Baba Sali wanted to hear what the Rebbe said, so he repeated what the Rebbe said. Then he turned to the Baba Sali and he says to him, "When is the Lubavitcher Rebbe going to come to Eretz Yisrael?" He asked the Baba Sali, "When is the Lubavitcher Rebbe going to come to Eretz Yisrael?" So the Baba Sali answered and he said like this: Moshe Rabbeinu was not allowed into Eretz Yisrael. The reason Moshe could not come into Eretz Yisrael was because Pnei Moshe ke Pnei Chama. The face of Moshe Rabbeinu is like the face of the sun. Eretz Yisrael, in Kabbalah it's Malchus, so it's the face of the moon. Eretz Yisrael is the holiness of the moon. Represents Malchus. Shines like the moon. If Moshe Rabbeinu would come into Eretz Yisrael, he would make Eretz Yisrael feel uncomfortable in the presence of Moshe. He would be an embarrassment for the holiness of Eretz Yisrael. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu's holiness is far superior than the holiness of the land of Eretz Yisrael. So he would shame Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, who can come into Eretz Yisrael? Only Yeshua can bring the Jewish people, because Pnei Yeshua ka Pnei Levana. Yeshua's face was like the face of the moon, so Yeshua and Eretz Yisrael kind of have the same level of holiness, so it doesn't cause any discomfort to the land. So the Baba Sali said like this: when Moshiach will come, v'hoya oir halavana ka oir hachama, that the light of the moon is going to be like the light of the sun. That means that Eretz Yisrael's brightness and holiness is going to become so much brighter like the light of the sun. Then Moshe Rabbeinu was going to come to Eretz Yisrael. That was the answer to the question when the Lubavitcher Rebbe is going to come to Eretz Yisrael. In the Sichos, the Rebbe, and Maimorim, the Rebbe is always talking constantly, again and again and again, Moshe Rabbeinu. Spashtusa and the Moshe, the Rebbe, the Friediger Rebbe is Moshe Rabbeinu in the generation. But the Rebbe doesn't just say that the Rebbe, the Friediger Rebbe is Moshe Rabbeinu in the generation. The Rebbe is Mavar and reveals an Amkus. That in a certain sense, the revelation of Moshe Rabbeinu in the later versions of Moshe Rabbeinu, if you can say, is even superior and stronger than the revelation of Moshe Rabbeinu in his initial incarnation in his body. So it's not also Moshe Rabbeinu. It's even more Moshe Rabbeinu. It's the same Moshe Rabbeinu. It's even more Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Rebbe, we're in this mimer that I mentioned earlier, mimer Ata Tetzaveh. Again, the last mimer the Rebbe gave to us, which is powerful mimer for the times that we're in when we're still in a state of concealment. The whole theme of that mimer is how the Nasi Hador, the leader of the generation, empowers and strengthens and invigorates the nation and gives them the strength in their emunah. It's an amazing. A week or so, when was it? The Rebbe gave it out. When was it? About a week or 10 days, I'm not exactly sure the date. A couple of Purim Katan, a little bit before the Rebbe's stroke, and what led to Gimmel Tammuz and the concealment, the Rebbe is standing and giving us primarily anybody that has a question, if the Rebbe knows what's happening and what's going to happen, he gives the Jewish people a mimer that talks about how the leader of the generation empowers them to have emunah in the most difficult of times. And in that mimer, the Rebbe explains that Mordechai, I mentioned it earlier, that Mordechai HaTzadik is compared to Moshe. In which idea? In the idea of Reya Mehemna. Reya Mehemna means he's a faithful shepherd, and he nurtures the emunah. That's the idea. Reya Mehemna doesn't really mean you can rely on him. It means that he nurtures our emunah. So the Rebbe says over there, based on the Friediger Rebbe's mimer, that Mordechai HaTzadik in his generation strengthened the Jewish people in their emunah in a very, very difficult time. And after many pulpulim, which we're not going to chazed the mimer right now, the Rebbe explains and shows and realizes that actually the revelation of Moshe Rabbeinu in Mordechai HaTzadik, the power of Moshe to nurture and strengthen and bring out the emunah on the deepest level, is more by Mordechai HaTzadik than even it was by Moshe Rabbeinu. Then the Rebbe says, as I said earlier, the Friediger Rebbe said it about himself, because he paskined on Mordechai, he's paskening it regarding himself. And therefore the Rebbe says, take a look, the Friediger Rebbe in Russia, in the most difficult times, the Friediger Rebbe was the one who fought the battle, now it's Chodesh Tammuz, and he himself, sole, lone fighter, the only one who fought like a lion, stood up against a regime of unparalleled strength. And this regime wanted to crush and eradicate all any remnant of belief in God and an observance of Torah and mitzvahs. Friediger Rebbe, a general, fights this war alone, and he triumphs over them, and he strengthened the Jewish people, and he won, because there's no communism today, and Yiddishkeit is thriving in previous Soviet Union. So Judaism won. The Friediger Rebbe won the battle. And even though in that case too, it took 70 years to see that full triumph of that battle. 70 years until communism collapsed. And what remained in Russia is someone by the name of Putin, who's good friends with the Chabad rabbi. And when it comes to matters of Lubavitch and this, he does everything amazingly. You see, unbelievable, the triumph of the Friediger Rebbe. But what do you see? So the Rebbe says the Friediger Rebbe is also Moshe Rabbeinu. And equal to Mordechai. But then the Rebbe goes ahead in the mimer, and the Rebbe says that as great as the Mesiras Nefesh of the Friediger Rebbe's generation was to fight when they wanted to crush Judaism, and they fought, Today's days, we are required to have even a bigger Mesiras Nefesh, a more difficult avoda. And what's our difficult avoda? The difficult avoda is not just to believe in Mashiach, but to not be able to tolerate another moment of Golus. Now, when Jews were on the way to Treblinka, when Jews were on the way to Auschwitz, cramped like cattle, not cattle, worse than cattle, cramped up in these boxcars, for those Jews to say an imam and to sing and achakaloi b'chol yeshayavai and cry that they want Mashiach now, we understand. It's not a big chiddush, it's not a big novelty that Jews and under such dire circumstances wait for Mashiach and want Mashiach. But when we're talking about in a generation where the Rebbe says, where there is an abundance of Gashmias, where we have freedom in the United States of America, and Jews are relatively wealthy, and we're not physically oppressed, and we're not spiritually oppressed, and we're doing really well, and we have whatever we need and whatever we want. I'm not saying there is no problems, but general life in the United States or in general in the world today is pretty good. And a lot of Jews are very rich and have all the luxuries you can even imagine. Every day comes out new Meshigasid. I just saw a thing that on the cruise ships now you can go and you can order kosher food and they don't charge you extra. And even if it's not a kosher cruise, you can get every chazarai. Just today, I saw in one of the news things. This was major news for all the Jewish people to know. On a major, that you have to know that if you're planning a cruise, you can go and you don't even have to pay any extra as long as you let them know a month earlier. You have your kosher food, whatever it is that you need. In any case, we're living in a world that's filled that people have, and spiritually you have everything. You have access today to more spirituality than you've ever had, in the sense that you have all of Torah at your fingertips. All of Torah on your fingertips. You can listen to more classes today than any Maggid Shir, any teacher, any part of Torah, mysticism, Kabbalah, Chassidus. You have more svarim explaining Chassidus today than you ever had before. More classes. Everything, every single thing you can marinate in spirituality. You can enjoy, everything. So nothing is lacking. What's bothering you in your life? So the Rebbe says that today's days, the avoid of our generation in which he is empowering the generation is that in the midst of all this luxury and all this light, we cannot tolerate another minute of this exile. And a Jew is crushed. He's crushed and he's broken. As in ganzen zutreselt, I think those are the words of the Rebbe. He's completely shooken up. He doesn't know what to do with himself because Mashiach isn't here. That kind of avoda, the Rebbe says, that comes from your essence of your soul, which requires the tzaddik, which requires the nasi ador, which requires Moshe Rabbeinu to dig out that kind of, and the Rebbe explains, which I'm not going to go into right now, why that's a much bigger chidush and a much greater novelty than having the emunah and going on Mesiras Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem in the Soviet Union, or allowing yourselves to be thrown into the big flaming fires of the auto da fe in Spain. That's a bigger Mesiras Nefesh. And this is something that is being given to our generation. It's interesting, when did the Rebbe say this Maimer? The Rebbe said this Maimer in Tavshin Mem Aleph in 1981. That's when the Rebbe started tumling, we want Mashiach now. Till then it was, we're going to finish the job, we're going to do the work. But that was the point when the Rebbe started with, when we have to demand that we cannot. And at that time, when the Rebbe said the Maimer, when did he give it out? In the time that was right before Gimmel Tammuz, the time it was going to be excruciatingly dark. And it's a time that, in a sense, you can walk away and say, you know what, Chabad is so amazing. Look at our Mifal HaShlichus, look what we accomplished, look what we do, it's so gewaldig, and you can learn Chassidus, and so on and so forth. And, okay, well, Mashiach will come, whenever Mashiach will come. The Rebbe tried, he wanted, didn't really work out the way we thought it would. Let's just go and build and make more structures and build the Jewish people, which is an amazing thing, but Mashiach doesn't have to be our main koch. The Rebbe gave us that maimer right then before that to realize that that is his main contribution to all of us. And that's his empowerment that he's giving us. And over there the Rebbe says that the Gilui of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Re'eh Mehemna, is the deepest that it has ever been. Because he's revealing, in order for us to be able to live in that state of mind, that we're so broken that the Eibishter is not here and not revealed, that's what's bothering us. That can only come when your essence of your neshama is revealed, but your essence of your neshama as it is still included and embedded in God himself. Atzmus of the neshama as it is still one with Atzmus Mahus. Only on that level can there be such two opposites. You can be living in comfort, and yet your koiches hagluyim, your revealed powers, are tuned in with your essence, that you can't bear that there is a gullus. But where am I driving all of this? The Rebbe is basically saying that our generation's Nasi, the last generation's Nasi, is a deeper manifestation and a deeper realization and a deeper expression and actualization of Moshe Rabbeinu than ever was. So we're asking the question, what did the Lubavitcher Rebbe say about the Lubavitcher Rebbe? One of the things he said, in addition to him being a Neshama Kolelis and the Nasi Hadoir and the leader of the whole generation, he's saying that he's Moshe Rabbeinu in the fullest manifestation of Moshe Rabbeinu. And in a sense, regarding, we'll soon speak about other things, but regarding the idea that Moshe Rabbeinu is the nurturer of Jewish souls, and he nurtures our faith, the deepest nurturing of faith is happening right now, currently, in our generation. And as Chassidim, we can receive that nurture. We are receiving that nurture, but when we pay attention and we learn these talks that the Rebbe is particularly talking about Mashiach, this opens us up to that dimension of neshama. That even though you're living, you have a comfortable life, things are kind of good in your life, but you're tummeling about Mashiach. Something is driving you crazy. That you don't stop. I know amongst the Nashim Tzidkaniyas, amongst the righteous women of our generation, I know quite a few of them that are so driven. No, like day and night, no rest. Mashiach isn't here. And they're going to turn over mountains, and they're doing it. And the men should get with the program a little stronger, I think. That we tummel as well. Tummel and non-stop. Now is the time to tummel, because now is l'chaim, l'chaim. Everyone should be blessed with whatever they need. Begashmi is mamish. Amen. I want to mention a bracha for the Refuah Shalema. Naftali Herz ben Rezel should have a Refuah Shalema. Take of him a yad mamish, mamish, mamish. L'chaim. Amen. Till now we're speaking about what the Rebbe said about the Rebbe regarding Neshamas Yisroel, Neshama Koleles, all Neshamas are plugged into him. Moshe Rabbeinu brings out the deepest parts of the Jewish soul, strengthens our Emunah like no other, with a level of strength that we've never ever had in all of history. Megala, certain depth. But probably the most telling element is something that the Rebbe speaks about already in Basi Lagani in the first Maimer. In Basi Lagani, when the Rebbe became Rebbe and he said the first discourse, the Rebbe lays out in very, very clear words what he's all about. That the Rebbe says over there that he is the Nasi Hashvi, He's the seventh generation coming after a sequence of seven of the greatest tzaddikim of the Nesei Chabad, and their job is similar to the first seven tzaddikim, beginning from Avram Avinu, culminating in Moshe Rabbeinu, whose job was to bring the Shekhinah down, bringing the Shekhinah down into this world, from heaven to heaven, down into the physical world, which is fully realized in Yetzias Mitzrayim, and then primarily in Matan Torah and in making of the Mishkan, in which the divine presence was here physically in this world, and then it was chased away again. But then it's going to be brought back down into the world finally in the end of days, also through a process of seven tzaddikim, and the Rebbe is basically saying that he's the seventh Rebbe, we're the seventh generation, and our job is to be mamshech the Shekhinah down lamata ba'aretz, which basically means to finish the job, which basically means that Mashiach Tzedkenu. That's what it means. So what the Rebbe said in Basi Legani as a forecast, this that the Rebbe says as the forecast, back then in Tafshin Yud, we merited to hear the Rebbe talk about it not as a forecast of what needs to happen, but of what has already been accomplished. And that talk we heard from the Rebbe many times in the years Nun Aleph and Nun Beis. One particular one that has been blowing my mind and I think is so revealing and so extraordinary is the Sikha the Rebbe speaks on the 28th of Sivan. The Sikha of 28th of Sivan, the Rebbe is referring to the time when the Rebbe himself came to America. And the Rebbe is describing, because the Rebbe came to America on Chav Ches Sivan, and we know an interesting thing. Not only did the Rebbe come to America Chav Ches Sivan once, but the Rebbe came to America Chav Ches Sivan twice. The Rebbe went back when he escaped the Nazis and came, his boat, the ship arrived 28th of Sivan. The Rebbe tells us many times everything is bashkacha pratis, especially what happens to a Jew, especially what happens to a Nasi be Yisroel, especially what happens to the ultimate Nasi, the ultimate leader of the Jewish people. So every little detail counts. But the interesting thing is the Rebbe doesn't mention it there, but the Rebbe went to France to pick up his mother. When his mother was saved after the war from Russia, in the transport that Russian Jews escaped with Polish passports, the Rebbe's mother was also smuggled out from Russia into Poland, and from there they went to France. I don't know where they went, smuggled her out of. And when they came to, the Rebbe went to pick her up. And when the Rebbe returned with his mother back to America, again, the second time he's coming from offshore into the United States, it comes out the exact same day. So it's hard to ignore the Hashgacha Pratis. But in that Sikha, the Rebbe opens up our eyes and says such phenomenal things, it's unbelievable. And as we said earlier, if one can miss and not pay attention, we can talk all the stories we want, and that's what I'm saying. To say beautiful things about the Lubavitch Rebbe is great, but to miss what the Rebbe himself is saying about himself is missing the point. It's really missing the point. And that Sikha, the Rebbe says that Koyach, what's the significance of Koyach Sivan? Sivan is Matan Torah. That's what the whole month of Sivan is. Koyach Sivan means the ultimate power of the Torah. What's the ultimate power of the Torah? That the ultimate power of the Torah is that it transforms the entire world and it makes the whole world into a home for God, which is Mashiach Tzedkenu, the coming of Mashiach. And the Rebbe says that happened on Koyach Sivan. Koyach Sivan, when the Lubavitch Rebbe, when the Rebbe came to America, this revealed the power of the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai more than it ever was revealed in all of history. But as the Rebbe builds the case, the Rebbe doesn't just say something, and in some mysterious way. The Rebbe is so clear. That's what's one of the things that is so magnificent is even though the Rebbe says in these sikhs the most eye-opening and I would say radical things, which for our gullus mind, our limited exile minds, it's hard to fathom, and sometimes it's like, whoa. But the Rebbe doesn't just say a himmelish word. He said under his talus, and so the Rebbe first of all sat by Farbrengen and spoke it openly and clearly, and then he produced the talk and he put footnotes. The Rebbe builds the case so methodically, so perfectly. I want to say, it's hard to say, like so geniusly. The whole thing is developed piece by piece by piece by piece, in which he's showing you that this is literally what it is. What does he say? Just very bekitzer. The Rebbe says that the whole inyan of Torah is called koyach. Torah is strength. Why is Torah the strength? Because Torah makes the world strong. Without the Torah, the world has the significance of a finite entity of time and space, which doesn't have any significance because it wears and tears and eventually it dissipates, it destroys. When does the world get an endurance? When does the world get a permanence? When does the world get a lasting existence? When the world becomes intertwined and expressive and one with the Torah. Then since the Torah is eternal, because the Torah is one with Hashem, that reveals in the world also that it has divine purpose, and therefore the world also is godly, and therefore the world also lasts permanently. So the Kiyam ha'olam happens by Matan Torah. The world becomes stable and strong. The Jewish people were empowered by the giving of the Torah, because the fact that we are able to bring heaven down to earth, we're able to take earth, which is so unholy, and as the Chassidus explains how unholy earth is, and we're able to take the low earth and make it one with heaven. That's incredible, unbelievable. That's our superpower. Where do we have a power to do the impossible? The Torah gives us the power. That's why Torah is strength. But the Rebbe says something deeper. The Rebbe says when the Torah is given down here below, Matan Torah reveals the strength of God as well. The strength of the Eibishter, because the real strength of the Eibishter is revealed dafka on earth. When the lowest of the low, when that which is the most antagonistic, when that which is the most resistant, when that which is the most hostile to holiness and kedusha, and when that too turns around, metamorphosized to express the Eibishter, that reveals the ultimate power and the ultimate strength of the Eibishter is expressed through the world. That's what Torah is, strength. Therefore, the Rebbe says the Torah doesn't happen to be given down here in this world. The ultimate purpose of the Torah must come down ba'olam hazeh hagashmi, into the physical world, because that's when the real power of the Torah is revealed, the real power of everything. Therefore, the Rebbe says that, and that continued sicha, that's the whole idea of shlach, parsha shlach. When the Jewish people are told to go into Eretz Yisroel, the Yasuru es Eretz Canaan, they need to find the Yisron, the extra power that there is dafke in earth. The Rebbe says there's a secret. There's a very, very deep secret. The deep secret is that the lowest point of existence has the potential, the greatest potential from all the higher infinite realms. The lowest, darkest point of existence has the potential that no other space, no other reality has. But it's the lowest. And through our work of refining it, elevating it, purifying, downloading Kedusha into the lowest point, not only do we make the lowest point also holy, but we actually unlock, and reveal the limitless power of the Eibishter that is dafke in the lowest point, and that suddenly then the lowest point becomes the source of light, of inspiration, of divinity, backwards to all the higher spiritual realms that were feeding it the entire time. In other words, the one that is being fed becomes the supplier and becomes the one that feeds the entire Seder Ishtalsos. Basically, the Rebbe says the whole purpose of creation is that the flow of God, that the Hashem should find a home at the lowest point. But when Hashem has a home, then what happens is everything gets reversed. That the lowest becomes the source of light and godliness. It becomes what's called an Or Chayzer. The light is coming from the lowest point back and illuminating all the levels that are higher. In Kabbalistic terminology, the Rebbe says it's associated with the idea that Aretz, earth, is spiritually associated with the last sphera. Spheres HaMalchus. Malchus is the lowest of all attributes. It's the recipient of all attributes. But when all the attributes are mashpia into Malchus, Malchus unlocks in them, reveals in the previous spheros their power that they never were able to tap into and realize on their own. And then Malchus becomes higher than all the spheres. So basically everything turns upside down. The lowest becomes the highest. So the Rebbe says, this is the ultimate purpose of Matan Torah, which was given then. This is obviously the ultimate purpose of the giving of the Torah for the future. The Rebbe says an interesting idea, phenomenal idea. He says that just like by Yetzias Mitzrayim, there was Matan Torah, and the purpose of Matan Torah is so that we should implement the Torah on earth. The same is also in the end of days, when Mashiach will come. We the Jewish people, and before Matan Torah is given, we the Jewish people go through an exile, so that we should be able to merit to get the Torah through. We're purified, so we're able to get the Torah, which through the Torah we can unlock the power of that which is the low. So too it is in the end of time. What happens? We go through an incredible long exile, much longer than the exile of Egypt, because at the end of that, we merit to receive a much, much higher revelation of Torah. It's the same Torah, but we unlock, it's revealed to us, a deeper, higher, infinitely higher level of Torah, which is going to be the Torah of Mashiach, or it's going to be the new Torah that's going to be revealed by Hashem through Mashiach Tzedkenu. And through that Torah Chadasha, so to speak, that's going to be the futuristic Torah, we can thereby reveal the power that lies in the low on a much higher level that we were able to do through the Torah that we got at Har Sinai back then. In other words, through Pnimius HaTorah, we can reveal the true Pnimius powers that there are. The Rebbe says we can uncover what's called Koyach of Atzmos, the power of the very, very essence of Hashem, that's Dafke there in Gashmius, that's not in Ruchnius. Okay? Following? So then the Rebbe says that even though that Torah is going to be revealed when Mashiach comes, we get a taste of it in the earlier generations, and that's Torah Chassidic. Torah Chassidic is already the Torah of the future world, and therefore the Rebbe says Torah Chassidic gives us the ability to be able to actualize the power that is in the lowest point more than we were ever able to do throughout all of history. Fine, but the Rebbe says, notwithstanding all of that, Chassidus was revealed primarily, he says, through the tzaddikim, through the rabbeim, where it was revealed in a higher part of the world. It was revealed in the higher hemisphere, in the upper, what's called, the Rebbe refers to as Chatzi Kadra Elyon. The upper part of the world, the part of the world that was closer to the half of the world that was closer to Har Sinai and to Eretz Yisrael. So when God gave the Torah, these parts of the world became purified. The lower half of the hemisphere, the United States of America, Australia, so on, which are the other side of Eretz Yisrael, on total opposite side, the Rebbe says the Chatzi Kadra Tachten is such a low part in the world that it has not been impacted by the giving of the Torah. And that's why the Klippa, the unholiness, the resistance to holiness, the materialism of the United States of America far surpasses all the resistance that there is to holiness and to Kedusha in the upper hemisphere. And therefore the Rebbe says the ultimate conquest, the ultimate power of Matan Torah is that the Torah should come from Europe, from the shtetls, from all the Torah centers on the upper part of the world, and be moved to the lower part of the world. And when that is accomplished, the Rebbe sees in the movement of the Jewish people to the United States of America, not just another stage in exile, but this is actually realizing the main purpose for why the world was created. That the lowest, most resistant Tachten She'ein Tach should be transformed. But obviously God likes a super challenge, so he makes the United States of America, that is going to be the toughest nut to crack, really tough and really difficult. That's why everybody knew that when you go to America, you're going to drop your Yiddishkeit. You're going to become less and less Jewish. And even if there was influence coming to the United States from Europe in Kedusha, it was Europe influencing the United States, a little bit. Then the Rebbe says the Friediger Rebbe came to America and things started changing because he announced America is not any different. And then the Rebbe says, he's not saying it openly, but what happened on Koyach Sivan, which is the Rebbe himself coming to the United States of America. And what happened as a result of the Friediger Rebbe's work, not only did America change, not only are there so much Torah, Yiddishkeit, Chassidus, mitzvahs, mikveh, kosher. As we said earlier, there's kosher even on the Norwegian cruise lines. Even there, I mean, the ideas of Yiddishkeit, kashrus, holiness, shuls, davening, learning are across the globe. So America was infiltrated, so to speak. The lowest point of creation became saturated. Jews could be Jews in the United States of America. Jews tonight over here with beards and dressed like and Chassidim and dedicated, learning Shiuri Torah, davening, learning in not Stam in America, but in Los Angeles. Talking about on the other side, literally, of the United States itself, in the toughest kalipa possible. So when we realize that our day, when you go and put on tefillin today, over here on La Brea Boulevard, just down the block, is the beginning of Hollywood. Right over here in the mucker of all klippas and the source of all resistance against the Eibishter, this is the purpose why the Eibishter created the world in the first place. And therefore your tefillin over here that you're doing over here, your tzedakah that you're doing, your mitzvah that you're doing, your chitas that you're doing, whatever is doing, is infinitely surpasses. It justifies all the generations. It justifies all the Yiddishkeit of all the generations. It was all created just for these moments, when the darkest of the dark. Fine. But then the Rebbe takes it a step deeper. And the Rebbe says, not only is America now permeated with Kedusha, it's much deeper than that. When the Rebbe came to America, America became the source of holiness to the rest of the world. Where did Kedusha start coming from? What became the headquarters? That's the Chiddush. The headquarters of holiness, from where Kedusha spreads across the world, left the upper hemisphere, Har Sinai, Beis HaMikdash, which was till now, that was the center, Mimena Yoitza Oira, and suddenly the source of Kedusha became in America, which means the lowest point started to sprout, and not only that, the Rebbe says, here's an amazing thing. Not only did America take on its own independence, energy in serving Hashem, but the Rebbe says a fascinating thing. The energy of Afatzas HaMayonis, of spreading Pnimiyas HaTorah, Yiddishkeit in general, and the spreading of Torah, when the Maayon, when the spring is in Brooklyn, New York, is far more powerful than the springs of light and Chassidus when it was in Europe. Why? Because then it's still differentiated. It had certain places you could reach, certain places you couldn't reach. There were certain limitations and boundaries. Where you can walk, where you can bring Kedusha, where you can't, what's off limits. There were certain, even the Rabbeim that reached out and tried to reach to inspire everyone, didn't go everywhere. Dafka, when the Rebbe came to America, and the Rebbe is talking about himself, without saying mamish himself, the Rebbe says the Friediger Rebbe, through his shluchim and so on and so forth, operating in America, was nizgala. What did he say earlier? That in Malchus, in the lowest of the low, it reveals the real potency of God, the fact that he's limitless and there's no place he cannot be, and so on and so forth. So Dafka, from the lowest point, is revealed the koyach habli gvul that was never revealed before. And now Yiddishkeit is pumping across the world with an energy, with a power that we've never had before. Basically, the Rebbe is talking about the global movement of Lubavitch across the world. There isn't a place, there isn't a Jew that is safe. A Lubavitcher is going to get to every single Jew, no matter where he tries to hide and where he tries to run, no matter how much he tries to conceal his Jewishness. We will unmask, we will rip the mask off every person who's trying to pretend he's not a Jew. Lubavitch will get him. Sooner or later, we'll catch up with every Jew. The power is there. There's no limit. Basically, our mindset is such. The mindset of every little bacher, 13-year-old bacher, is that no Jew is hiding from me. And there's no Jew that's off limit that I can't put him on tefillin, I can't do a mitzvah with him. There's no house that can't keep Taras HaMashpacha. There's no place that can't keep kosher. Nothing is on. The Eibishter is actually going to be everywhere. That power was revealed dafka in America. Why? Basically, the Rebbe says, this is what just happened in the last 40 years. The Rebbe says, this is the whole purpose of, that's koyach sivan, the power of the Torah, to burrow through to the darkest point, but even deeper than that, to unlock the mystery of the darkest point, that in the darkest point is really the power and the potency stronger than anywhere else. And therefore the Rebbe says, that house from where the light goes out to the entire world and becomes the source of Kedusha and holiness for the entire world. Again, I'm not saying something about the Lubavitcher. I'm saying you what the Lubavitcher Rebbe says about the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So this is crazy. The Rebbe says that the house that the Friediger Rebbe has established, called 770, that became the headquarters. The Rebbe says, number one, it's gematria ufaratzta, without the vav. Paratzta. Paratzta means Mashiach. What's paratzta? Peretz. Peretz means beyond boundaries. Until the headquarters of Torah and Yiddishkeit came to 770 Eastern Parkway in the lower hemisphere, God's light was limited in the world. It wasn't infinite. The Eibishter's light in the world was limited, not infinite. The Eibishter is infinite, but his light in the world did not realize its infinity. Dafka in 770, the Rebbe says, which is coming where Yiddishkeit moved to the toughest place, Dafka from the bottom, what we call bottoms up. From the bottom, all the light comes, and the Rebbe says that's ufaratza, that's infinite light. Infinite light. No limits, no barriers. But, the Rebbe says, 770 has another meaning. 770 represents the perfection of time and space. Because all of time is 7, and all of space is 7. 7 directions, 6 directions and the center, 7 days of the week, 70 nations, 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 musical notes, 7 seas, 7 continents, 7 skies. Everything is 7. So 770 represents the perfection of time and space. Hold it, we're talking about 770 means paratzta, means that there's no limit, it's infinite. The Rebbe says, do you want to know how to get to the infinite light? Not by running away from time and space, by burrowing deeper into time and space, and to going into the narrow crevices, into the most constricted places, where it seems like it, dafka by reaching into every part of time and space, dafka from there you unlock the power that's beli gevul, that's infinite, from amazing. And therefore the Rebbe drops a bomb in that sikha. He says, since 770 is basically the gemar and the shleimus, and the operation coming from 770 is therefore the gemar and the shleimus of what the Jewish people needed to accomplish from when the Torah was given. It's the koach of Matan Torah realized like never before in its ultimate power. Therefore, and this is the place from where light comes to the entire world. This is the manifestation of Nis'ava HaKadosh Baruch Hu Liyas Loi, that God wants to have a dira b'tachtonim. Therefore, it will be this place, 770, where the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi will reveal itself. Can you believe that? Everybody thinks that the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, the third temple, is going to reveal itself on the Temple Mount. In Jerusalem. If you want to go to ground zero and you want to see where is the third Beis HaMikdash gonna come down, on which place? So you say, we'll wait. We're in Jerusalem, and we'll wait for that. Iran is beginning. People, whatever, who knows? It's going to be a nuclear showdown. Wow, where and when? Oy, Geval. Let's go to Israel. Let's look up in the sky. We'll start seeing the colors changing. There the Beis HaMikdash comes. The Rebbe says, you're looking at the wrong place. The Rebbe says the place where the Beis HaMikdash will reveal itself is the place where the shleimus of the avodah of the Jewish people reached its climax, where we flipped over the entire creation upside down, that the tachton, the lowest part, is the source of light and expressing atzmos, expressing the Eibishter deeper than it has ever been expressed. And from there, so from 770 is where the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi. The Rebbe says two things. First of all, you can see that this place has already, it's the hachana for the third Beis Hamikdash. And then he says, actually, it's the place where the Beis Hamikdash. So in that sicha, the Rebbe actually uses these words. He says, this is what the Nasi Hadoyer, the previous Rebbe, could demand. He has the right, because since he was the one who completed his job, he has the right to toivea zayin, to demand and ask the Eibishter that the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi should be revealed in his shul, basically in 770. That's what the Rebbe says in that talk. So it seems like it's not a definite, but it's a possibility. But when the Rebbe gave out later another kuntras called Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavel, and in that kuntras, an edited sicha, where the Rebbe edited the whole entire sicha, and it's with his notes and everything, and in that particular sicha, the Rebbe states it very clearly, without any question, that the third Beis Hamikdash will reveal itself, Dafkin 770. And he builds a magnificent build. He builds it up, unbelievable. He explains it in such a methodical way, and it's unbelievable. Why Dafka there? Because he brings the Gemara, where the Gemara says, I'm going to do very bekitzer, just mamish 2-3 points. He says the Gemara says that there is a special place where the Shechina rests. When the Jewish people went to exile, the Shechina went to exile with them. Where's the Shechina go? Where the Jews are. That's why the Shechina is in all the shuls. The Shechina is in all the shuls. In every shul you daven, a shul, the Shechina is there. But the Rebbe says the main residence of the Shechina, the Gemara says, is in one particular shul. Which particular shul? The Gemara says that's the Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavel. That's the Migdash Ma'at. That's the Eilam LaMigdash Ma'at. That's the Beis HaMigdash. The small Beis HaMikdash that we have in Golos, even though it's every Beis HaMikdash, it's primarily the Beis Mikdash of Rav. Rav was the leader of the Jewish people in Babylonia. But then the Rebbe builds it and he says, hold it. Not only is the Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavel. Oh, so and the Rebbe explained why is it based? Why is the main Hashras Hashchina, the main dwelling of the Shechina, in the shul of the main rabbi, of the leader of the generation? Well, the Rebbe says a simple idea. He says, why is it that whenever that you can't daven Ma'ariv or Mincha and say Kaddish without 10? What changes when you have 10? Because the Shechina is there. Why is the Shechina there when there's 10 Jews? The reason the Shechina is there when there's 10 Jews is because the Shechina is there when there is one Jew. But when there is one Jew, it's only a tiny little crumb of the Shechina. When you have 10 Jews together, you've created enough Shechina energy that it's considered that it manifests suddenly like as 10, boom, it catches on a much stronger flame. Because you have all these sparks. So the Rebbe says, why was the Beis HaMikdash the place where... But we all understand that the Shechina that dwells where there are 10 Jews is incomparably less than the Shechina that dwells in the Beis HaMikdash. Why did the Shechina dwell in the Beis HaMikdash? On a much greater level than everywhere else, not just because it's God's home. The reason why God is what's He doing here in this world in the first place? God is down here in this world in the first place because the Jews are here, and God is inseparable from the Jewish people. So therefore, the more Jews come to a certain place, the more the Shechina is there. Where is the place that the most Jews come, where all the Jews come? Beis HaMikdash. That's why. Why is the Shechina in the Beis HaMikdash? Because all Jews are in the Beis HaMikdash. What happens when the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed? And the Jewish people are no more in one shul. So there's little pieces of Shechina. Where? Everywhere 10 Jews are. And if there's and we know that it's more important, a shul that has more people has more power. Because a lot of people are there. But the Rebbe says, is there a shul where all Jews are there during the Golus? There's no shul where everybody, by Jews, everybody has a shul that he doesn't daven in. So since there's no shul where all Jews go to, so the Rebbe says the only place where all Jews are present is in the shul where the Nasi Hadar davens. You know why? Going back to this theme that I said earlier, the Nasi Hadar is the entire generation. His neshama includes all the neshamas. So even though physically there might be people who will never step into his shul because they think that he's not a leader or whatever, they have complaints. But that doesn't make a difference. Their neshamas are all inside his neshama. So he is a neshama that includes every Jew. So therefore, in his shul, the leader of the generation, all Jews are there. If all Jews are there, that's where God is. So the Shekhinah dwells where the Nasi Hadar is in his shul. That's what the Rebbe says. Fine. Then the Rebbe says, the main inyan of the Migdash, of the Beis HaMikdash that's in Golus, is not for Golus. It's when Mashiach will come. What's going to happen to all the shuls when Mashiach comes? What's going to all the Jews? That's what it says in the Gemara. All the shuls that are everywhere there is a shul, a shiva, they're all going to leave and they're going to go to Eretz Yisrael. They're going to attach itself. The Rebbe brings there from the Marsha, very Geshmak of Pirush. It says, "Va'aviyosim al harkachi v'semachtem beveis tefilasi." Ki beisi beis tefillah yakarei l'chol ha'am. And my house will be called the beis tefillah for all the nations. The Rebbe says, what's the meaning that my house will be a beis tefillah l'chol ha'amim? So the Rebbe brings from the Marsha that my house, the Beis HaMikdash, every nation is going to say, we feel that we have a part of it. Why? Because that shul was in Italy. The piece of the Beis HaMikdash is coming mikol ha'amim, from all the nations. There are shuls in every country. The Moroccan shuls are going to represent Morocco. So Moroccan goyim who will come after Mashiach comes, because after Mashiach comes, the entire world will flock to the Beis HaMikdash. Everybody will feel Yikar L'cham, this is part of theirs, because they will see their own shuls attached to the Beis HaMikdash. So the Rebbe says, but when they will attach themselves to the Beis HaMikdash, all shuls, by the way, they won't just go to Eretz Yisrael, they will attach themselves to the Beis HaMikdash. That's why the Rebbe says that, it says, the Marsha says, how large will the Beis HaMikdash be after Mashiach comes? It will be the size of Jerusalem. And Jerusalem will be large, the size of Eretz Yisrael. Why will Beis HaMikdash suddenly be so large? The Beis HaMikdash itself has its measurements, but attached to the Beis HaMikdash will be all shuls. Obviously, you'll need a really good architect to make it really look nice, because you don't want to make it like really look ugly. You want to really look nice. It's going to be done well, I'm sure. Okay, fine. Somehow it's going to connect. Every shul is going to find its place in the Beis HaMikdash. But here's the thing. The Rebbe says, but the ones, which shuls are going to be attached the closest to the Beis HaMikdash? Directly. Others are going to attach like a puzzle. Which one is going to be directly attached to the Beis HaMikdash mamish? The Beis Rabbeinu Shebabavels throughout history. The central shul throughout history. Where the grand rabbi of the Jewish people lived, and his shul, those are going to be the first ones attached, and through them. So the Rebbe says the main idea of Beis Rabbeinu Shebabavel is not just that it's a central location for the Shekhinah during exile, but it's actually, even after Mashiach comes, they will serve as the connectors of all the other shuls to the Beis HaMikdash. Fine. But then the Rebbe says, according to this, comes out, when the Geula comes, let me ask the question, when the Geula comes, where is the Shekhinah? Where is the Shekhinah? A moment before Mashiach is fully revealed. Where is the Shekhinah? Chazal tell us, wherever the Jewish people are, that's where the Shekhinah is. We said, Galu le'adam Shekhinah imah. Who is going to be the last one to come out of exile? The Shekhinah. It says the Eibishter doesn't leave. It says V'shav Hashem eshavuscha. Hashem is coming together with the exiles. Hashem is not going to leave before Shekhinah doesn't leave until we leave. That means that at the moment, and when are the Jewish people coming back to Eretz Yisrael? All of them, not before the Geula. Some Jews come before the Geula. But when are all the Jewish people coming, even the very last Jews? Once Mashiach comes. That means till Mashiach comes, where is the Shekhinah? In Chutz Li'aretz. Where is the Shekhinah in Chutz Li'aretz? Think about it, just follow the math. The Rebbe Mamach builds it. Where is the Shekhinah in Golus? In Beis Rabbeinu Shebabavel. And which one? The last Beis Rabbeinu Shebabavel in Golus. The last one. From the last generation. That's where the Shekhinah is. That means the moment before Mashiach reveals himself, the Shekhinah is where? In Golus. Once Mashiach is revealed, the Shekhinah will also reveal herself. When the Shekhinah reveals herself, is it enough for her? She's the glory of God. Is it enough for her to have a broken shul? No, she needs immediately what kind of nest? In Golus, she can live in a whatever shul we make in Golus, a little rundown shul, because she's in exile. But the moment Mashiach comes and she reveals herself with all of her glory, what does she need? A palace. What's the palace? The Beis HaMikdash. So just like the Shekhinah reveals herself in Golus, and therefore at that moment, where is she? In Golus, she already revealed. The Shekhinah manifests and reveals, and therefore immediately needs a nest. What's the nest? Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi. So where does the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi have to reveal itself? In the very space of the Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavel. Then, so you would think that what? That the Rebbe would leave it over here and say it's enough. Does the Rebbe leave it over here? No, he doesn't. He continues a long discussion. And what does he say? But we're not going to go through the long discussion, just one point. What does he say? What's the Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavel today? He says it's 770. When the Friediger Rebbe came, because he's the leader of all the Jewish people, and the Rebbe is the leader of all the Jewish people, and therefore all the Jewish people turn for prayers. They all come to ask for brachas and so on and so forth. This is the headquarters. Therefore, the Rebbe says, where is going to be the place that the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi is going to reveal itself? The Rebbe gives you an exact address. He says it's going to happen in 770. The Rebbe is very clear. He publicized it. Now, obviously, when we hear this, there is a certain part inside of us that might say, sounds like, do I believe? Is it really true? Is it really happening? Yeah, it's really happening. There's no shadow of a doubt, a svek and svek shebiyolam. Notwithstanding all those who question, all those who think it's insane, it's impossible, all of that is going to be dismissed all the scoffers, all the laughter, all that is going to be dismissed in a moment. The ultimate, every word that Rebbe said in these sichos are going to be fully revealed and fully manifest the whole takvoi. And there isn't a question that if, as we spoke before, what a Rebbe is, and that he's completely miyuchad with the Eibishter, and the words that come out of his mouth are words of prophecy, words of ultimate truth, that without a shadow of a doubt that this is the way it's going to be. Ein shum safek ba'olam. Most of the world, however, is unaware that the Lubavitcher Rebbe said this. People think that those who say that the Rebbe said, that the Rebbe is this and this, is that the Chassidim, people, crazy lunatics, made these stuff up. You can learn it. And it's not something the Rebbe said like in a Farbrengen, quietly whispering to a chassid or saying it to someone by Yechidus. If you count the stuff that the Rebbe said privately, there's tremendous, unbelievable amount of amazing things. I'm talking about what the Rebbe said publicly and openly and have it printed, and it's printed and bounded in books, part of Lakutei Sichos. You can learn the Sicha. It says it clearly outright over there. Basically, in addition to all the other things that the Rebbe is saying in those sichos, in addition to all the other places, if there had to be anywhere that you can point to ask, did the Lubavitcher Rebbe say anywhere explicitly or almost explicitly that he is Mashiach? I think there is no shadow of a doubt. If you're saying that any other conclusion after you learn these two sichos, Chav Ches Sivan, I challenge anybody to learn it, Chav Ches Sivan and Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavel, and see if the Lubavitcher Rebbe said that he is Mashiach Tzidkenu. If he's not Mashiach Tzidkenu, why in the world is the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi revealing himself in his shul at the moment of the Geulah? What's it doing? Mashiach, he's whoever he is, wherever he is. That the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, the Geula is happening right at that point. Where is the Geula going to happen? At his, right over there. Why is it happening right over there? Because that's his shul. That's where he is. Who's there? Obviously, this is a derivative of what the Rebbe says. To me, it's clear that it says, but you might say it's a derivative. But in other talks, also explicit and direct, the Rebbe says it even clearer and clearer and clearer. So the Rebbe clearly said to us that Nasi Hador, he's the leader of the whole generation. He's the Moshe Rabbeinu of the generation. He's the one that completes the work of all the generations. And from our generation and from his leadership comes the light to all the previous generations. He's the ultimate finalist who finalizes, completes the work. The final work of completing the work in this world is his avodah. We're going to go back to the question, and the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi is going to reveal itself in his shul. We're going to go back to the question, but it didn't happen. But it was 25 years later, after Gimmel Tammuz. I take you back to what I said right at the beginning of the Farbrengen. The Jewish people were born with a promise that took 25 years for it to be fulfilled. Avram Avinu was promised he would have a son, Yitzchak, and he didn't have him until 25 years later. God's explicit promise, and it took 25 years. The Eibishter did not tell Avram Avinu it's going to take 25 years. It was 25 excruciating, painful years. And we are standing today 25 years after these, since Gimmel Tammuz, but after these incredible revelations were given to us by the Navi Hashem. And I didn't even get to that part, where the Rebbe builds an entire sikha, and he says explicitly, and he says it explicitly, not just explicitly, he says it explicitly, and he asks that we should publicize it. He asks that we should publicize it across the entire world, that what? That he is a Navi, and that he's a prophet from God to the Jewish people, and that the Jewish people need to recognize his prophecy. And the ultimate prophecy is the prophecy of the Geula. That too, you can look in the Sikh, Parsha Shoftim. And there too, very methodical, according to halacha, piece by piece. I'm not giving a shir now. Piece by piece by piece by piece, the Rebbe develops it. And the Rebbe did not want that to be kept a best kept secret, that we hush quietly by a Farbrengen. The Rebbe says it's the Hayrah that we have to go and be mefarsim it to all the people of the generation. That there is a Navi amongst the Jewish people, and that all the Jewish people need to take counsel from him and turn to him for counsel. And the final Nevuah is that he has given, which the Rebbe points over there to the Alter Rebbe's Maimer, that he's saying it not as a Chacham, he's saying it as a Navi. Which means it cannot change, it cannot go wrong. We have the promise of God without a shadow of a doubt that the Geula is here, it's coming any second. So 25 years of darkness doesn't change a thing. On the one hand, at that moment when it's going to happen, we're going to say, oh, he said so. On the other hand, it's going to hit us so strong. Because we're going to say, he really meant it, and it was really true. We're not going to know what to do with ourselves. One thing I can say, Ashrei, how fortunate are those who have left the window of faith open. How fortunate are those who believe with absolute certainty in every single word that the Rebbe said. Sadly, it's so easy to fall. The Yetzer Hara is very strong. Tries to fadrei us a cup, tries to distract us. That's our avodah. Our avodah is to dig deep. But here's the thing. I believe, to me, it's certain that any chassid, a chassid is connected deeply. His neshama is connected to the Rebbe. So these truths are available for every chassid and for every Jew to be felt very deeply in his neshama with absolute certainty, with absolute conviction. But we need to do what the Rebbe told us to do, and that is to learn these very sichos. We need to learn them, because when we learn them, then it's revealed in our neshama. And it's manifest, then it's revealed, and it's open in our souls. Then we can sense the Geula. Then we can sense the Goyel. May we merit, though we don't have to talk about this, but we should already see it with our Gashmiistic eyes. We should see the complete Geula. May it be now. L'chaim u'lebracha, l'chaim u'lebracha, l'chaim u'lebracha. Yechi Adonenu, Meirenu v'Rabbeinu, Melech HaMoshiach, Le'olam Va'ed.